Accept our apologies. We had just learned that there is no audio, or hasn't been audio, and apologize. We did not know that in the room. Think we've fixed it now, so hopefully you're hearing us. I don't actually know how we can check that.
Yes, you can raise your hand.
Yeah, maybe, well, we have people who have been raising their hands, and actually I was just waiting for Attorney Heath to finish his comments so that I could address that. So maybe, looks like everyone has lowered their hands. If you can't hear us still, please raise your, I don't know how to.
Yeah,
that's the way to go.
I got a
Please raise
text
your
from
hand.
someone saying it's fixed.
Okay, oh, great, okay. So, fortunately, we've recorded, I hope we've recorded the room audio.
I tested the speaker before we
I know, I
started.
saw you, I heard you do that. So I'm hoping that Attorney Heath's very comprehensive explanation of site plan review will be on the recording, and we apologize. I'm not gonna make you go through that entire thing again. But we did just come up to site plan special permit review explanation, and maybe you can continue from there.
Sure, and that's pretty much where I was gonna mostly wrap up. I just wanted to note that there are multiple ways. Well, site plan review can take a couple of forms, and the one I was speaking to for most of my comments about a use that's applied, a level of review that's applied to a by right use can't be denied, can be conditioned, but those conditions need to be reasonable and not undermine the fact that the use is in fact allowed by right, is what we're talking about, I think, when applying to MBTA zoning. In other contexts, like a regular major plan special permit in town, site plan may be combined with special permit, and that's perfectly fine. But again, I just wanted to acknowledge that our existing zoning sort of blends the two types of review into one under normal circumstances, but we're not going to do that here. Not going to do. No, that's if there's one takeaway from this comment, it's the true site plan approval that we're talking about here, that is applicable to a use allowed by right.
Right, so I just wanted to just summarize what you said. We have for the planning board, we have site plan review for as of right, we have special permit review, right? And then and we usually, the special permit, we do site plan and special permit review at the same time, and a lot of other towns do it as well. Okay, for MBTA communities, you have to have site plan review separate. And what we heard is that VAG is putting some pretty strict, making sure that the as of right remains as of right, and that it's going to be similar to the Dover Amendment, let's say, where there's limited or limited community and planning board input, because it's probably going to be more strict than regular site plan review.
The level of discretion that can be applied is much lower for site plan approval. The project has to be approved, and it's just a matter of devising reasonable conditions to mitigate any impacts that may be identified during the review.
So can you clarify if the current zoning bylaw under the combined special permit site plan review process, does that outline a process for the required information?
So you've got two sections of the bylaw. One addresses site plan approval, and then a section or two later, you address special permits. However, they are back to back in the zoning bylaw, and there is some overlap between, which if you read through it, there is overlap between the two. So it is possible, I think, to take existing section 7.4, which speaks to site plan approval, and try to figure out how to make it perfectly clear that all you're doing is the site plan approval discussed there. And you're not also doing major project special permit review, which is what immediately follows it in the bylaw. You could do that in a couple of different ways, but it will be important to, so you can do that a couple of different ways. You could say you're just doing section 7.4, but you're not touching the sections that follow when you're doing a review of an MBTA project. Or you could take existing section 7.4 or something similar to it, possibly pared down slightly, and put that, cut and paste that section and put it in the new body of the MBTA zoning bylaw and make clear that for these types of projects, you are only doing that site plan review and you're not also referring over to 7.4, 7.5, and 7.6. So I think that's to say it is absolutely true that we must only do site plan approval. I think as a drafting exercise, you could do that a couple of different ways. And I'm not sure which one is going to be the preference of the group. But yes, on some level, it must be true that the new zoning will expressly avoid any reference to a special permit in any section of the bylaw that refers to a special permit, if that makes sense.
But, so my understanding is that the site plan review for MBTA communities cannot be more restrictive than other site plan review.
Yes,
And since our site plan review is a bit ambiguous or unspecified, perhaps the planning board would want to clarify all site plan review.
Yeah, is that on the to-do list?
Yes,
Okay.
we had talked about it, that we were gonna review it. But I guess one question that I have is, does the design review board have any say in, since the planning board really has very limited, does the design review, or is-
design review is, may want to think about that a little bit more as we go, but to my mind, design review is advisory, not binding, on the applicant. And design review typically does the types of things that is perfect, that are normally perfectly fine under site plan review. In other words, you might want to move this, I don't know, parking space or lighting fixture or something from here over to here. You might want to adjust the architectural features of the building slightly without, really cutting at the unit count or the other aspects of the use. So I do think design review is possibly permissible. I worry about it mostly in terms of any delay. And I don't mean that negatively, but it's adding to the process. And one thing we have to keep our eye on here is giving all applicants under MBTA zoning a path to approval on a reasonable timeline that doesn't extend out too far.
Yeah.
And sending someone to board number 2, if they've already got to come to the planning board for site plan approval, is adding to the timing and adding to the burden on the applicant.
I want to ask Lee to weigh in here because we talked about issuing design guidelines. And I want to make sure I understand how that interacts with design review board.
what do you mean design guidelines?
Well, I think the design review board was going to make some recommendations for these districts of what might be appropriate design guidelines. But I don't know that they're going to be prescriptive enough, like what you would have under a 40R process, where there are really detailed design guidelines that are done for the district that kind of accompany the as of right use. I mean, when we did the design guidelines for Needham Center, that was done through a process that went on for almost a year and a half. I mean, they are going to make some recommendations in terms of what standards might be appropriate to include in the zoning, but it's not going to be nearly as prescriptive as it was when we actually did almost like form-based guidelines. That would have to come subsequently.
When you did form-based guidelines, are those still in place?
We did detailed design guidelines but they were district specific. So they were for Needham Center. And they were for the Chestnut Street corridor, when we did all the rezoning for those districts. I mean, we have some generalized design guidelines for the town, but they're not, I wouldn't say form-based. They're not talking about where the building has to be relative to the sidewalk with the parking, with the parking behind. They're not, laying out, volumetric, images of how the buildings ought to be placed along the streetscape. So they're not really detailed like that. And so I think you could have zoning, I think, as of right zoning, where you had developed those kind of guidelines for each of these districts that we're talking about, the business district, the Hillside Avenue Business District, that would, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, which would link back to an as of right use.
Could there be an overlay that has this?
That has design for purposes of
Of design guidelines, because what it sounds like is the AG is basically gonna make it as easy as possible for it to move forward, and that there's gonna be limited. So if you don't put it in the zoning, but if it doesn't allow you to put it in the zoning, then what measures do we have for review?
Design guidelines, to my mind, could be helpful to the applicant, not, in the sense that
That's probably the way to go.
But we're not gonna have that level of specificity, I don't think, for each of these individual districts at the heights that we're just talking now about, what we're gonna create.
Is
But the
it,
question is, could we use the existing?
Well,
design
well,
guidelines?
the existing, that was the question of the design review board, but they're specific to, I mean, we have them for Needham Center, we have them for Chestnut Street, so we didn't study the business district, or Sudbury Farms. We didn't study, changing the industrial district on Hillside Avenue. We don't have that level of guidelines for those districts. It would be taking elements of those and describing them and trying to apply them there. But I think it's very difficult to do that.
Right, although we
At
did
that
it.
level, maybe Ron.
Like Ron,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I unfortunately have to express discomfort, because I'm not sure that the design review process is gonna fly. Obviously, we can talk about that in the submissions we might enforced or so to the state agency, but there's a whole tenor in the MBTA law that this is as of right, and a separate design process that is not backed up by a special permit, I think may be perceived, and it can't be backed up by a special permit, may be perceived as purely obstructionist. And that's not my phraseology, I've used it, but I'm not saying that it is, but I think that that may crash at the state review. And so my own sense is that we be very careful on that and recognize that that may not be available.
Yes, having refreshed my memory on site plan review just in the past year because of the controversy over the daycare center on Central Avenue. Our zoning bylaw intertwines site plan review and special permit. And we argued in that case that, of course, daycare centers are allowed by right under state law, that we weren't applying a special permit criteria. We were only using the special permit process. And I have read case law about that in the context of site plan review. The process in question has to do with, who gets notice, what's the timing, but particularly on if a permit is issued and it has conditions that the developer finds unacceptable and thinks that it's gone too far, where do you bring the appeal? If it's clearly just site plan review with no mention of special permit process, the appeal is to our own zoning board of appeals. So then if the zoning board of appeals overrules the original, maybe the planning board was the original site plan review, then it can go to court. No, excuse me, it becomes even more complicated because the zoning board of appeals then says they can go right ahead and get a building permit, and then but if it's a special permit, the appeal goes directly to the court. It doesn't go to the zoning board of appeals. So it seemed to me in thinking about, the description of site plan review and in the guidelines and everything, that perhaps we should be careful and make this purely site plan review and not intertwine it with the special permit process. That would mean a possible appeal to the zoning board of appeals, which would the disadvantage of that is it could set up disagreements between local boards. So what is your advice on that, Plunge?
So I absolutely agree that we should divorce this entirely from special permit review. This must be purely site plan approval and only site plan approval. The appeal part is interesting. You are absolutely right, Gene, that just site plan approval doesn't usually get a direct appeal to court. And that's precisely because site plan approval is not addressed in chapter 48. It's just something that exists under the local bylaw, so you can't appeal it as you normally would under chapter 48. I don't have a preference, I don't believe, as to how the appeal is provided for. Yeah, I don't have a preference myself. There is some utility to having the unappeal of a site plan approval decision go to the zoning board of appeals, because that allows for some possibility that it's decided in-house before it goes all the way up to court. Alternatively, you're absolutely right that I've seen examples where that leads to some tension between a ZBA and the planning board, because one is reviewing the decision of the other as the sort of appeals court. It is possible, I believe, to say in your zoning, and this is a little weird, but it is true. If the bylaw were to say site plan approval decisions of MBTA zoning projects can go right to court under 48 section 17, that will allow for the appeal to go right up to court.
And you don't even have to use the word special permit or
You
special permit
don't,
process.
so you could draft the bylaw in such a way, if it were the preference of the group, to avoid the need to go to the ZBA and provide for an appeal directly to court. It's odd to me that a town can do that, but there is case law that says a town can do that.
Gene, I just wanted, the reason why that particular, the Dover Amendment went to both special permit and site plan review, even though it didn't need to, right? I mean, it was to be able to have community input, public process. No,
Well, one could have site plan review with community input and hearings. The site plan review process can say that there are going to be hearings and people will get notice. Isn't that
No.
correct?
No,
That they can't?
no, we discussed that at last meeting, that, at least in the advice from Emily, who was here, was specifically that there is no notice requirement, nor is there a
Right.
hearing associated with site plan review under the MBTA Act. That there is a public meeting, there's notice for an open meeting, but there's not notice to abutters. And it is not a public hearing, it's a public meeting. So I know this is a lot of words.
Where did this advice come from?
Emily.
Emily? Oh,
Who's our consultant, and also, as I understand it, is the person who wrote the model version of site plan review that is in the MBTA materials. So she wrote up a form of site plan review that the state is making available to the 177 communities. And so that exists, and it's a very, as Chris has described it, it's a very narrow purview of what is reviewed. It has an emphasis on stormwater, on-site impacts as distinguished from off-site impacts. Chris, I don't know if you've had a chance to review that form.
I think Emily also, I think she said that we could actually, although we had the option of creating that kind of process. We could do.
The design, you're talking about design?
No,
review?
we could actually choose to do notifications, and follow, and I think that's what Chris is pointing to.
Really?
Yeah, I think,
In a as of right?
yeah,
You're
that's
town
what I'm
council.
getting to, is our zoning has to be very specific, because it doesn't sound like there are a lot of rights.
So I have
For the boards.
seen nothing that would prohibit the town from conducting a normal public hearing for a site plan for a by right site plan approval. I think, to my mind, so I can keep looking to see if it's out there, but I have not seen a prohibition that says we cannot do that. I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind if you do hold a public hearing, which is, what can be accomplished in that public hearing, because the use can't be turned down. The use can only be conditioned, and the conditions can't go at, things that have been enacted legislatively, which is how much the density and that the use can go on this property or in this zone. So I don't, and the public hearing would need to conclude within a reasonable amount of time so that it doesn't extend out too long. I believe the model zoning that they've published says that it has to be decided, a site plan approval decision needs to be rendered within 6 months after filing of the application. So if the public hearing were structured so that it opened, happened, closed, and allowed for a decision to be rendered within that window of time, and I don't see that the, allowing for the public comment in and of itself would run afoul of MBTA zoning, but I can certainly,
You have limited amount of changes that you could make anyway, because it's as of right.
correct,
I mean, it's very minimal what can happen in the meeting.
But
yes.
we have been saying to people at our community meetings that there will be a site plan review process, and that they will have an opportunity to comment on what's proposed in any particular project. I don't know if we use those exact words, but I think
I don't think we have.
I don't think we
used
said
those
that.
words.
I think we said
I-
that there will be a review,
Okay,
not that there would necessarily be public review.
I'm
or
not,
Public comment.
I'm not speaking in terms of that I'm necessarily intellectually opposed to it. I just don't think it's allowed. And so we'll have to explore that, I guess, because that's,
It sounds like the whole point is to be able to have as of right and for this to happen in an easier fashion. So I guess what I'm thinking is based on what we know about the Dover Amendment now is that if the zoning better be in place to be as of right in the way that we feel comfortable. So that, because there's very limited community input or planning board input for site plan review for those types of projects, they'll be protected by the state. That's the reality.
I think the most fundamental aspects of any given MBTA project, how many units can there be? Where can it go? How tall can the buildings be? How setback do they need to be from the lot lines? All of those things should be really set in stone in the zoning itself.
Correct.
So it's all been decided by the time the site plan approval application is submitted to the reviewing board, leaving, I think, as an open question, how much more is going to be done to that project when it's been reviewed. If it's necessarily based on the zoning we adopt at town meeting, not too tall, not too close to the property line, not too many units, et cetera.
I think this is, excuse me, complicating things. Is it possible in a site plan review to have an as-right condition and give discretion to a board for more, larger bulk, higher, based upon?
that's a special permit.
Is that a special permit? So in the site plan review, there's no discretion to increase.
They wouldn't be
That's
asking to, they would have to be complying with by right condition, right?
Yep.
So then, if they wanted a special permit, they would have to be asking for more. Because otherwise they can just do it.
But there's no flexibility, so it sounds to me like what is allowed by right, if the town wants control, we have to be comfortable with whatever the maximum is.
Sure.
And anything beyond that
In
would
the-
have to be a special permit.
in the zoning.
Yeah.
Right, and one of the things that I learned, from this past experience, the past couple of years, is that if you have a setback, you really need to look at all of the streets independently because of the places that we're talking about. And I mean, we're doing it within larger blocks that are more limited, but the 35 foot or 40 feet on some streets is, closer to the street than other buildings. So I think that we should look at the zoning to make sure that it maybe says, make sure that it's at the same level as all of the buildings in the area or whatever it is, unless it's in the same. But I think we really need to look at that carefully, or it's gonna be as of right, and we would have written the zoning to allow what we get is what we put in the zoning.
But I think we also have to make sure that those conditions, whatever we put in the zoning, is not more restrictive than other zones in town. Because I think that's also looked negatively by the
I
attorney
don't
general.
understand that.
Well, some zones are each gonna have their own character. I don't think they have to be the same as each
They
other,
don't have
but
to
it should
be
be
the same.
appropriate for that zone.
We should just look at them, make sure that those numbers are correct.
Well, maybe this is a question for Attorney Heap. So, if there are requirements that are imposed on MBTA community zones that are more restrictive than any other zone in town, is that compliant?
There is a rule, I believe, that says you can't require things of multifamily housing under MBTA zoning that you don't require of other uses.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that, and we can think about exactly what that applies to. That may go toward application requirements more so than actual dimensional requirements, because I do think it would be fair to say in the MBTA zone that if the building's going to be 4 stories tall, perhaps it's set back a little bit further from the lot line than a single family house. But you're absolutely right. There is a rule, this applies in 40B as well as under MBTA zoning, that says don't layer on additional requirements that you don't single out multifamily
We're not
housing
penalizing it.
in a way that you don't single out other uses that have to apply for other things in town.
As I recall, there may have been special mention of additional environmental requirements, green buildings. If you don't have it, that rule for every building in town, you can't specially have it for the multifamily buildings.
That's a good example.
Any other questions for Attorney Heath? Okay, then, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I do just want to mention, because I do see a hand raised, I want to mention, again, this is a public meeting and an open meeting, but it's not a meeting tonight at which we're having public comment. I apologize. I wanted to get to this as quickly as possible so that you don't feel like whoever it is who's raising their hand, we want to hear your comment, but we can't accommodate public comment here tonight. So if you want to make a comment, please feel free to email us at planning@needhamma.gov. Always still accepting comments that way, but we can't do online comment here today. So we won't be calling on you. My apologies.
And Heidi, can I add to that? We've received many emails and letters this
Yeah.
past couple of weeks, and they've been sending it to all of us. We've been reading them, so we're hearing all of the comments and seeing all of the comments. So please do send comments. As Heidi mentioned, we can't take any tonight, but we are seeing them and we are looking at them.
Okay. Yeah.
I had this in mind to ask to our town council that has to do with the quantum vote. And I wonder if it's all right or appropriate for me to ask that question.
Well, sure. We do have a lot to get to tonight, but if it can, since he's here.
Okay, I know that there was an amendment to the zoning act a few years ago, and I don't have the exact words of that amendment in my head. But the idea would be if you are zoning to make it easier to build housing, whether it's single family housing and you're changing the setbacks to make it easier to build, or multifamily, you're allowing multifamily somewhere it wasn't allowed before, that kind of thing is a majority vote now rather than a 2/3 vote.
Absolutely. This, as I envision this zoning is going to work, it can be adopted by a majority vote of town meeting rather than the typical 2/3 that would be required for most other types of zoning amendments.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to be able to hear that because I thought it was true.
And that does include if there's a provision that doesn't, if there's a provision for, as we've talked about having, let's say, 3-story of multifamily, but 3.5-story of mixed use, would it still?
Then,
Mixed use is allowed as either,
Then-
combination or.
then it gets complicated because the non-residential portion of mixed use projects don't get the benefit of the lower voting threshold. How that works when your zoning is allowing the same, 10-page zoning proposal is allowing both of those things is complicated. We'll have to think about that.
Good question, Roger. A second question.
And
All right, so we're gonna move on to talk more about our final base scenario. We have a couple of tweaks that have to be discussed. Eric, I'd love it if you could also remind the group or tell the group about the conditions required by that center offset, because we didn't get that outcome in our last meeting, so I want to start there, if you don't mind, and then talk about everything else in the base scenario.
Sure. The last time Emily and I met internally with Lee and Alex and Katie during our kind of bi-weekly check-in, Emily had finally had the discussion with HLC staff and was able to ask the question about the parking requirements as part of the mixed-use offset district. And if you remember from several weeks ago, we flagged the issue along with Lee, or Lee flagged the issue that in a strict reading of the way that the new mixed-use offset worked, it was very unclear as to whether the non-allowance of parking, so having, they basically said you can't have parking for commercial uses is what it says in the guidelines. So it was unclear if that's applied strictly to mixed use where multifamily housing is, say, over commercial, or if someone came in and proposed a standalone 3-story office building with no housing, would the town still have to allow that building with no parking requirements? So I think really what Emily came back with was HLC said it was really meant to apply to mixed use scenarios and not standalone commercial. So if someone came in and wanted to build a standalone restaurant, retail shop, coffee shop, office building, the town would still be allowed to require parking ratios like it does in all of the districts. If it were mixed use, then I believe you couldn't require parking for the commercial component of the mixed use building.
So you could require the residential parking, but you couldn't require the commercial.
Right, right.
Does everyone understand that?
But they could still provide it, it's just not required.
They could still provide it.
They could
sure,
choose to provide it,
But it's not required.
right?
Yes, we have to amend our zoning in Nino Center to enable that. Because right now it's requiring it for all of the uses in the building.
Certification, but it can apply a parking requirement to the housing portion of the building.
Correct. Yeah, just like if someone came and wanted to build standalone multifamily in the center, somewhere, then they would still have to build parking.
Just so clear, currently, parking is required for all uses in the center, and that's,
Currently, parking is required for all of the uses in the building, so if you have a mixed-use building, it's required for the commercial component and the housing component, it's additive.
and that's not compliant to the,
Well, in order to be able to count the center with this offset requirement, we would have to change that rule so that it was compliant with that particular requirement for the offset provision to count.
is that a different requirement than outside an offset?
Like in the rest of the actual
rest of-
MBTA district?
Yeah.
That's correct. So anywhere else, you can set the parking rules as you choose. Yeah.
So the question is, we know that our base scenario is a little low on units. So we could, we have already on the table from Lee's email previously and in your packets, a number of choices with regard to adding more units to our base scenario to hit our number. This is another one. If we choose to use the offset, given that we would have to adjust parking, our parking bylaw, this is another option. I just wanted to throw that on the table because we hadn't heard that information before.
And what would have to be changed in the bylaw would only apply to that central business district? Or
Only
also-
apply to the Central Business District commercial mixed use parking requirement.
Very specific.
And I just want to make sure I understand this. If a building is proposed or a new use is proposed for a building in that zone that is 100% commercial, we can have our usual parking applied.
Right.
It's only a situation where you have the mixed use and it's only the commercial part of that, you can't have the parking.
Is that to incentivize mixed use?
You know, I don't know the answer to that.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, why would you even have that?
Yeah.
Okay, so, now that that's explained, let's just go through the base scenario and the choices that we need to make.
So, I guess I can share this. Okay, so just so everyone's aware, I apologize greatly for what happened with the calculations. Something happened between versions of our GIS map when we were saving out the versions, and somehow, like GIS is, if you think about it's like a layer cake, and you stack layers on top of each other, which is sort of the best part about GIS, but apparently and it all works on projections, so like projections of the planet Earth and how things line up and blah, blah, blah. Somehow one of the projections, one of the layers was off ever so slightly. And when we did the selection of the parcels that exist in the town of Needham, by using the zoning districts that you see on the map on the screen, they were just off slightly, and it was selecting parcels that happened to be outside of what we designated here. And for some reason, when we exported them, it wasn't showing up in the map, but when I opened it in Excel and compared it to an older version, it just looked off. So it led me to sort of go down this rabbit hole and figure out why, you know, alongside Allison. So it took us a few days to figure out what the heck was going on, but thank God we did. So anyway, it resulted, the correct version resulted in what you see in the table on the screen, what I believe was in your packet, which is 1,703 units at a density of 18.1 units per acre. So we're good on the density, we're good on the acreage that we need. It was really just, we're now 70 or 81 units short of where we need to be for compliance. So amidst sweating and panicking, looked for some options and came up with a couple, which Lee sent out in the email. So in addition to potentially using the offset, which personally I think could be a little more complicated than maybe some of the others, but we could potentially bring in the A1 district that already exists. I think we actually talked about at a prior meeting. I believe it's a couple of parcels. There's quite a bit of sort of wetland and excluded land acreage, kind of more in the southwestern corner of the area. But the rest of it, we could use in the model as developable. It gets us like 140 some odd units. So it
Are
would
you
get us
talking about Greendale Avenue, the parcel on Greendale Avenue? Is that what you're?
yeah, all the way
St.
down.
Sebastian.
Yeah, St. Sebastian's.
Beyond
Yeah,
Charles,
Oh,
Charles
Charles-
Court.
yeah, Charles Court.
Okay.
Right, Charles Court.
Which we had discussed.
Yeah, why do we walk
Fine
away
with
from
that.
that?
I think there was a feeling that it was sort of out there compared to everything else
It
that's
was the
along
10%,
Highland
right?
Avenue.
We had 10%.
Yeah.
We had,
Is that 10% or, well, it's 1780? Yes, yes, but 10%. The total over the land.
Over 100.
yeah, that would fit within the 10%.
It's in the 10%, right?
Yes.
Is it land or unit?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both.
Does that fit? Does that work?
More complicated.
Well, it's definitely within the unit.
Yeah, it's within the units. It's gonna be,
So you need 81 and this would give you 141.
yeah,
Okay, so that seems like a no-brainer unless anybody is against that. It already exists, right?
yeah. So we just have to look at the overall acreage and compare it to the 90-10%. That's the big the one there.
And an advantage is because of being told that you're not considering any rezoning in the Hersey area. Now, although this is beyond a half a mile, it is close enough that people could walk to Hersey Station.
Yeah.
And as far as traffic and so forth that might be generated, it's in that area, you know, so.
And
I
it
think-
already exists, you're not.
Yeah, and
adding-
of course, the housing already
The kids
exists,
at St. Seb's walk it every day.
yeah, but it's three, you know,
I
it's
mean,
three.
I see them get out, yeah, the
Yeah.
kids walk that every day,
Yeah.
as it is.
And this would also capture all apartment associations right now, right?
Yes, it would capture the scenario, the base scenario, if we added this one, would capture all of the apartments except for the 40B developments on the other side of the highway. Yeah,
For consistency's sake.
and then, and the 40B development on Greendale wouldn't capture it either.
Just need to bring up Lee's email really quickly, just for the other ones.
And that is a condominium. It's not an apartment development, so, I mean, it's not a rental. apartment.
um, Sorry.
I received a question from a constituent about this. I don't think it's a problem. They said that this particular development has a requirement about pets and doesn't allow pets. I don't think the MBTA community law speaks to that at all.
What's the age of the pets?
Neither does Roseberry Ridge allow pets.
So I don't think that's an issue.
You can't limit it to elderly pets.
There's elderly pets. No ages.
Okay. Two other options that I thought about where we could stay within the zoning districts that are shown in the base map. One is if we made a change in the Chestnut Street Business District from the current 18 dwelling units per acre limitation that's applied in the model, going from 18 to 24 dwelling units, that would result in 1,832 units or 48 additional units over what you require. The other option is changing the floor area ratio in the industrial district. Right now, the model has it set at 0.5. If we went from 0.5 to 0.6, that would give us 1,801 units or 17 more than you need. But I think Lee had pointed out some potential challenges or sort of inconsistencies with those in the email.
Including the Chestnut Street one, Lee.
Well, the only issue with the Chestnut Street one is that in Needham Center, it's 18. And so now you have a higher number, not that you wouldn't want to change Needham Center at some point, but you have Chestnut Street with a greater density in its base than you have in the center of town, in the center business district. So that was the inconsistency.
And then the center business mixed use offset is now 245 units. Does that increase the units then?
That was a decrease from our original
That's the
model,
decrease.
and that was again because of that projection issue.
So it's not a recommended strategy. It's what it is. I have 4 bullets of recommended strategy, so it's not a recommended strategy.
I think Lee included it as one of the 4 options. It's the last one in the email about the center business.
You're changing that requirement. I just thought it was easier to add in Charles Court than it was to actually start fiddling with Needham Center and bringing in
So
folks who live in Needham Center, own property there with a second conversation.
does everyone feel comfortable with adding that, the first one, and you can meet the requirements with an additional 60 units or something, is that right?
Yeah.
Total's 1844.
See, it's an easy one.
That's a motion and second.
Yeah, motion to approve A1 apartment district Charles Court, these condominiums to have a total of 1844 units.
Okay,
We just need to check the acreage numbers and make sure that we can get that to work. So that's all.
You mean because of the
The
what?
10% of,
so my only concern about that is that we're out of time. So
What's the second?
we don't have another meeting between now and 7. So we need to nail this down. Is that something that we can determine tonight? Or how, I mean, how do we make
Could
this
we
a final decision?
authorize them to staff to
Is
do
there-
Charles Court or then go Plan B?
Well, just looking at this, according to this, it's under 8 acres and there's a total of over 100, so that would suggest it's.
Is
Less
this-
is within
Less
10%.
10%. If that's the
In both
issue.
cases.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. And a second, so we're gonna vote on this motion, and Kevin,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
I vote yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Excellent. Excellent, unanimous, wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, so our base
Good night.
scenario is set.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes,
There's
please.
just- George, I'm sorry, there's just one issue I think I'd like to fix now, because we fixed it for Chestnut Street, and that is on the Hillside Avenue Business District. We basically followed the FAR from the apartment district, but the base zoning in Hillside Avenue Business District has an FAR of 0.7. So I think the 0.5 really doesn't make sense. So I would just recommend that we reconsider that and increase that FAR in Hillside Avenue Business in the base scenario to match what is the foundational zoning, which is a 0.7.
So it's leaving it as it is and not decreasing it.
That's right.
I will motion to,
it's a case 0.7 now.
correct.
In the zoning, but it remodeled it at 0.5.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah.
decreased it because
So this
we
will-
don't know.
We decreased it because they were following the recommendations of the housing plan, and the housing plan had done that. And, but it doesn't really, I don't think, make sense in this context.
Okay,
And I don't think we really focused on that in the
I don't think-
housing
I
plan.
don't think we're
Never
focused on
really
that
focused.
level of
Yeah.
detail.
So change.
I'll second that.
So another motion to put it back to where it currently is. And that would give us more units, I would
leave it
hope,
unchanged.
as a buffer
Sure.
to be able to.
I'm gonna look at that while you're talking. Just give me one
Okay.
second.
Well, we can still vote.
Because for
Yeah,
some
it's
reason,
only gonna be
for some
positive.
reason, I don't think it actually
Not gonna be
does.
less.
So you
Yeah.
seconded it.
Right,
Yes, I
okay, so
second.
we've got a motion on the floor to keep the Hillside Avenue Business zoning FAR at 0.7 rather than reducing it as we did previously. Any discussion? Kevin,
Aye.
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
excellent.
It does. It goes from 56 to 80 units, so we get,
So
then you have a
clear.
buffer, so we
Wonderful.
should be
It's
okay.
good to have more.
Okay, great. So, does that wrap up our base scenario?
yes.
Okay, and so our, so our total unit count for our base scenario is what now?
It's
Supposed to be
1844
1784.
plus the additional.
So it'll be should be 1844 plus 24, which is 1870. With-
68.
Close enough.
Yes,
At all.
68. Thank you.
Okay.
1868.
That was fast.
mhm.
Eric, I know that you didn't have enough time to ferret out the various unit counts that we had requested.
Yep.
One of which was existing units on per district. One was the total buildable units for the new zoning, and one was the net new units available to put in a district. Is that something that we can expect to see on March 7th?
Let me just make sure I understand your question, because I think that might be different than, I feel like it's different than what Lee might have asked me. So what I understood Lee's question to be, and this might be me misunderstanding it, was if you remember from the base, we said when we run existing zoning parameters on the districts that we've identified for the base, how many units are actually allowed today if we could build housing. If you remember, it was like 1,700 units. I thought Lee's question was, can you do that for the bonus scenario to give us,
So you know the difference.
so you know the difference?
Yeah, but
Existing
what
zoning
I'd like to
versus
know
proposed.
is what exists and how many more.
I mean, physically exist? Or what,
No,
or
what-
what is zoned for?
What is zoned for?
What is zoned for?
Yeah.
And then what the new zoning does, do you know the difference, or how many
Yeah.
units are there?
Per
Well-
district, right, like for Neighbor Square, how many more are we adding? Is that what you're asking?
Right, that's not what people are asking me, is my point. What people are asking me is, I don't know how many exist, and then you're telling me that the total is gonna be this. So how many more could we build over what exists? And I recognize, I know we've had this conversation to some degree, saying like, you can't just be counting all the buildings in town. But I do think that it's a fair question for people to help people understand what the ramifications of the zoning changes could be. And so maybe somebody here has a suggestion, when people ask, I don't know how many are in a given district now, and then you're telling me that this is the new number, but there's no way to relate that to how many more buildings we can be building, so.
It's an equation. It's I know what X looks like, what is X plus what we're doing.
How do we figure
What is
that
our
out
current
to
zoning?
show people what the differences could be?
Okay.
Does the Board of Assessors? have
Obviously, the
information?
assessors thing.
Yeah.
And, apartment A1 allows housing by right. And, so it's perfect for compliance. Somewhere housing is allowed, it presently requires a special permit. Would you say, when you're saying, I want to present the base scenario, what can be done now? Would you include like Hillside
Yeah,
Avenue
that's a
business,
different
which
calculation.
presently requires a special permit for multifamily?
I'm not talking about anything requiring a special permit. We're only talking about by right,
By right,
but we have a lot of by right in our
we do. Okay, I just
bonus
wanted, I
scenario
wasn't
as
sure.
well.
So what you're talking about is, I think what I've sometimes referred to as theoretical net new units.
Yes.
That concept. Yeah, because I think the housing plan had, and the action plan that was submitted to the state, which was based on the housing plan, I think it's about 500, but yeah, I don't think it's broken down. I mean,
Currently,
because
our,
that mostly is Rosemary and, I think Charles Court may have been mentioned in there, but,
We have that in the.
currently our
housing plan?
bonus plan talks about all these new units and people will get sticker shock, but it doesn't include the units that already exist. So like there's a delta between the units exist and the possible built units.
And would we include areas that are zoned for multifamily, such as St. Joseph's Church? As presently zoned, it's been zoned since the 70s, but it's not actually developed now for multifamily. Would we include that area in the calculation?
Yeah, I mean, if we're including it in the map, I think we have to include it in the count.
Right, I just
So-
wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
So it's three, and I think this is helpful. There's somebody looking at this, there's three databases. How many exist in a zone? Say it's 100. The current zoning allows for 125, and the proposed zoning is for 135.
Yeah.
And that way someone can see the net difference between 35 new units rather than 135. I think that would be really helpful.
Right, because it sounds like we're zoning for 1,780, or whatever, 1,800 units, but we're really not. There's a significant amount that already exists and a significant amount that the zoning already allows.
Right, so it sounds like existing, we would need to go and get from the assessor's office. Just, we're not,
So we've tried to do that. Needham's assessment data, as far as we can tell, doesn't have unit counts, which is why when we did the,
If it has addresses, we can count the number of addresses.
great, if someone in the town could tell me how to do that, I would totally
But
do
they
it.
could
well, I
do
think
it.
we could probably provide it.
Great,
Yeah.
no problem.
That's
Well,
not-
for-
Everything we've
Somebody's
tried,
looking at me like,
yeah, everything we've tried to do has not worked. So if anyone has suggestions, I'd love to hear
So
it.
how, is it in an
Okay,
Excel
well,
spreadsheet? I mean.
I'll
Assesses,
call the
addresses
assessor's
doesn't give
office.
you
I know.
number of units.
That is correct.
I'm gonna try it
First
tomorrow.
assessment would be a lot. 10 units in this lot would be 100. units.
Coming for you,
Same
Melissa.
address.
Well, and condos would be different than rentals.
That's different, rentals.
Yeah.
Also the weird thing, like if you look in GIS, sometimes you can click on something like Rosemary and it actually just gives you one person's,
Yes.
one person's,
Yes, yeah.
address. So
Right,
It
right.
looks like there's a person who owns all of Rosemary and it's assessed for like $400,000.
I don't think that's the best use of your
Noticed that,
time
yep.
or the information that we have.
I agree, but to answer the question that Heidi is asking about and that I think residents are probably asking about, we would need to work with someone in the town to figure out how they can provide that to us, the actual unit count. Otherwise, we can't, we have
Right,
no
but
way
you
of
can,
getting it.
you can provide the proposed number, obviously,
And the exist.
and then we just subtract to get
Well,
the.
the existing
net
zoning,
units.
Well, the proposed is what the model's showing.
Right,
For these
so,
different
so we
scenarios,
have
but we
a,
can
we
also
have
have.
a plan to get the.
the existing,
But I thought you also wanted the zoning, what
The
current
current
zoning
zoning.
enables. You
right?
wanted to know what,
That you
what
gave
what have
us.
we already planned for,
Right.
and we've already regulatorily.
I don't know, I
No?
mean.
No, I think that's what we're talking about. There are three things. That's what you said.
Yeah.
So there's the existing, which you're gonna call the assessor's office and see if we can figure out how many units there are for the districts, right?
Right, but that's not gonna tell us how many you could build
He,
under existing.
but we
zoning.
already have it, because it's a 1,700, you can do it by district. So he can provide that, because he has the model to do that, and then provide what we're proposing by district. So we'll have the three numbers and it's a comparison. The one that he can't do because it's existing and, you know, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
waste of your time really for the fee that we're paying you to help us do, you know, figure out other things.
Yeah, so in Bill's scenario, I can do letters B and C. I just need help doing
Right,
A.
and I'm gonna see what I can.
Yeah.
Finagle the assessor's
Okay.
office to get that.
But I think in terms of what, at least as I understand it, what you've done based on the existing zoning, I believe you said that you ignored the fact that units were required a special permit, that you were getting the number just in terms of massing. But I think it's important that people understand that that number isn't, those are
Yeah.
now subject to a special permit. That would change, but that number is a little as an asterisk. on it.
Right, I don't think we're ever gonna get perfect calculations for any of these numbers, except for the, you know, potentially the proposed zoning. Because that's theoretical, so we can, you know.
Yeah, it's all
But,
theoretical, yeah.
yeah, so, but it will help people to visualize kind of what we're talking about in terms of proposed view.
Yes.
I think it would help to show, for example, as I mentioned, Hillside, a business district that allows multifamily housing by special permit and has a lot of multifamily housing existing that was allowed. When you talk with people about existing housing, I think to say, well, we're not going to include those because those required a special permit. I don't know, I think that would maybe not present the existing housing the way.
Well, I don't think we're gonna be able to do that anyway. I don't think we're gonna be able to make that distinction in the existing housing, because.
Under the existing zoning, we're not gonna be, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just gonna say, in this district, there are approximately this many dwellings currently. Right, and how they got there, not so much.
Oh, well, then I misunderstood you. If the zoning currently requires a special permit, we're going to ignore that fact and just.
And just say what's actually
Oh,
there.
good.
So like
I
there's
thought
20 houses
exactly
on the
opposite.
ground.
Okay,
We're
Right.
proposing that you could build
Yep.
theoretically 40.
Current
So
zoning
that
allows
means
30.
20 new houses could be, you know,
And the current zoning allows 30,
yeah.
so,
Yeah, so I mean, it's not gonna be super precise, but it will be helpful. I think.
Yeah,
Well,
I
It'll
understand
help
what
me
you're
to
asking.
answer
I think the
questions.
vast majority of that's going to be a combination of what is already on the ground at Charles Court, Hamilton, Highlands, at Rosemary, and then just a few others. I've been thinking there was no housing in Chestnut, but I think there is a senior building.
Hollow, yeah.
And a couple of those houses that look like they're mostly businesses, but I think some of
Right,
them.
and like clearly in the industrial
Some of them
district,
may
there's gonna
actually,
be,
yeah.
you know, very few.
Right.
And then it's gonna look like a housing boom
it's
there.
later, that's why we're doing this.
Okay,
Okay. If I could just layer on like sort of one more layer that we're gonna do once we finalize the bonus scenario tonight. So what was requested, and I actually was in our scope, and Katie had brought this up when we talked as an internal group, is we've developed what's called a propensity for change model. So it essentially looks at all the parcels that are within the MBTA districts that we're looking at, both in the base and the bonus scenario. And we're going to look on a parcel by parcel basis, and we essentially run a financial feasibility model on every parcel. And if the value of so for a development that could be created under the proposed zoning here, is X percentage greater than the assessed value of that parcel today, it might indicate that that parcel is more likely to turn over if this new zoning gets passed, because there's more financial gain for a property owner to realize than there is today. So that will also help likely chip away at that total number and say, hey, out of the 4,100 units we're talking in the bonus, maybe only 40% of those parcels could turn over based on the value differential between today and in the future. So that'll also give people a better idea of not only how many units might be more likely to build out over the next 40 or 50 years, but also where they might build out and in what districts. And that's what we want to run the fiscal impact model on, is the propensity for change models.
Okay, that's great.
Are you able to calibrate that by looking at the difference between like an average, the current assessed values and the market value?
That's what we will do.
And then beyond that, you'll look at like that percentage increase, how much greater? I imagine it has to be, the current value is already usually greater than the assessed value. So,
Oh, I see. No, so it would just be a comparison of the assessed value to what the value of a redevelopment scenario would be. Yeah, and if it's like, then we will break it down into like which ones are 25% greater, 50% greater, 75% or more, to give you like almost like a bunch of layers of likelihood. Because we can't predict the future,
It's probably gonna have to be a lot, because I think there are a lot of, because I've looked at this, just for fun. Looked at some house sales and what the assessed was, and it's not uncommon to see that the actual sale price is a good 25%, 25% higher than the assessed value.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, for someone to actually sell their building, if you add in another 25% capital gains, for someone to do that, they're gonna probably want, that much more. Remember, that's why we had to pay a lot for that, house over on Lincoln Street.
Yeah.
Was one of the reasons.
So
So it's gonna have to be like, I would think, you'd have to be looking at something like 75% before
I agree.
it would really be.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
Yeah,
really be
it's
in play.
interesting because this effort has been cast in some areas as detrimental to property values. And I think, to my mind, this is actually the opposite, that it is going to raise property values because they are going to be redeveloped and there will be therefore potentially more valuable.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see the results of that.
Yeah.
Analysis.
But isn't it dependent on the size of the lot and the size of the project?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
We have a lot
absolutely.
of tiny lots, so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're 100% right. Yeah, we can't figure out
the
aggregation and
consolidation
stuff like
issue
that.
still
Yeah,
exists.
yeah. So it's the best we can do with what we have.
Yeah.
But I think I've mentioned this before, like in the other towns, like in Arlington, the total number of units zoned is 3,000. There are 1,800 units on the ground, that leaves 1,200 theoretical new units, and their predictions between 50 and 200, I believe. And in Lexington, they zone 3,000, I think it's almost all in commercial areas, so there's very little housing in there. And the middle of their estimate is 600 out of 3,000, that's over a 10-year period. And so far, they've had no takers after a year. And in Brookline, they did the two-tiered thing. It's different two-tier, theirs is more like location-based. So they had areas that would meet the requirement, then they had the Harvard Street was where they actually were looking for the extra. And their estimate was that the original, what we're calling the base, would actually yield virtually zero, because most of what they were doing was converting special permit into by right, but there are places that the special permits were actually being granted. So there, the understanding is that it would be zero probably without the additional. So I guess the bottom line is, whatever that total maximum is, you subtract what the existing base is, and then maybe you're looking at 10 or 15%, something like that, over, and
10
again, this
years.
is over at least 10 years, yeah.
So it's not very many units at all.
No,
Just a comment about the value, I think when you're expanding uses, number of uses on a parcel, I I agree with you, it's going to increase the value. I think the concern that I've heard is about parcels that are not, that don't have those extra advantages, but maybe abutting or maybe nearby. And the concerns could be about secondary impacts, so like height, you know.
Yeah, there's
we're looking
actually
at-
lots of studies that show that abutting properties suffer no property value degradation, but,
I'm just
Certainly,
explaining,
people can have, you know, yeah,
I'm
those
just-
concerns are out there, definitely.
no, explaining, because I think it's different for every parcel.
Sure. But when people, you know, put out that we're like protecting a particular zone because of whatever reasons, I think my understanding was that actually this is a benefit that we're bringing to parcels rather than a detriment. But people can disagree for sure.
okay, also people don't understand that if we were allowed to have 1,700 units and we're just going for 18, whatever, 68 or 48 or whatever it is, that could be built by right. Some of them could be built by right now anyway.
Yeah.
So we just want to make sure that whatever zoning we're changing is sensitive to the community that it's going in to be beneficial for all, you know, ideally.
All right, so let's start talking about our bonus map.
Okay, so we ran the bonus, fixed the projections, and came out with 4,170 units based on the zoning parameters and the areas we talked about last time at a density of 37 dwelling units per acre. These are all the zoning parameters. The setbacks are flagged just because we haven't sort of figured that out yet for those districts, but if you just wanted to see what it looked like across each of the individual districts.
Pardon me, do you mind just,
Lifting up.
yeah. Thank you.
So this is just a breakdown of each of the individual districts that we talked about last time and that we modeled. So you can just see the unit capacity, which ones are driving capacity and density. You know, apartment A1, not surprising, there's a lot of that there, and it's a pretty permissive zone. Chestnut West, that's the one with the 4 stories compared to the east side with the 3, so that's driving some additional intensity. The business district, industrial.
Can you put the other one next to it? Is there a way of doing it in the other one? The base scenario, just for comparison?
I have them on separate slides. I can put-
Which ones have the largest change, right? Because even though you might have 1,000 in the apartment, maybe you had. Maybe some didn't change as radically.
Yeah, I think the smallest changes were 0 at Avery Square Business. Modest increase in Chestnut. I'm sorry, Chestnut, east and west, just east would be a small one.
West grew.
Not much at Hillside.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest changes were, you know, in apartments.
Apartment line.
Apartment was big, Chestnut Street
Chestnut.
overall, because
Right.
under the base, it's all one, then we separated it under,
Yeah.
under the new
So
scenario.
those are the two, and those are the two that grew the most.
Yep,
Actually, the industrial looks like, did it go down? Oh, no, because there's industrial.
It's,
yeah, it went up a little bit,
it's split,
yeah,
but it's up a bit, but not.
yep, it's up a little bit. And, you know, we're adding 264 units for the new center business carve out that we didn't have before.
What if we go to the plan and just look at the areas that have the,
Well, so first let's just discuss the total output here. I mean, I think there's a concern that the total number is large and people are gonna freak out about it.
but if we know where it is, maybe they won't, is what I'm getting to, right? Like if it's an area where people don't feel.
Well, I feel very torn about this personally, because I think we did a really good job and thoughtful analysis in each neighborhood, move through in a very reasonable way and linked all of these different areas to each other in a responsible way. I'm pleased to see the number that turned out. I do, however, understand that, you know, there's sort of a reaction that people will have. And so I think it bears asking the question to this committee to say, how do we feel about this number before we change anything?
I feel the number is high, but I want to see where it is, because if it's in the right places, then it probably isn't as much, there isn't as much impact as just seeing the number on its own. If we know that Avery Square is not changing and a lot of different areas aren't changing, but it's the apartment one area and we're trying to get more apartments, it might not be as scary.
Anyone else?
Sure, and my thought is that, I go back to the approach of, two scenarios, that we were hearing two totally different but strong voices in town. One to comply with the MBTA Act, one to substantially exceed it. And in my mind, our approach was to reasonably and thoughtfully present both alternatives to town meeting. And in my view, we do that with the base scenario. This bonus scenario, I think, answers that alternative voice. How town meeting will deal with it remains to be seen. I think it's important, this may go beyond the scope of the question, but I think it's important in my mind for us as a group to present both alternatives, in my mind, ideally as unanimous out of this committee. Not necessarily that each of us would vote for both scenarios at town meeting, because that's a different question, but as the committee, I think it's important that we recognize both strains and present it to town meeting as, if you want to go this way, if you want to zig, you can go this way, if you want to zag, you can go that way. Both of these are thoughtful options. And so from my perspective, the number, the 4,000 number, I personally think is too high, probably won't vote for it at town meeting, but I think it's responsible to bring it through home as that option. The questions I have with it is, how do we have a couple of things we kicked off to the planning board, Percy and general residents. And so one question with the bonus scenario is, what does the bonus scenario look like in a year or two with planning board makes recommendations? But I think that's purely down the road and way too speculative. So long-winded way of saying, I think we said that we would, as a group, we would make a responsible presentation to town meeting with both options. And in my mind, the bonus, I'm not saying it's written in stone, but in my mind, the bonus scenario is a responsible presentation in responding to the comments that we heard.
I have a question on one particular parcel that I didn't realize was going to be have apartment A1 extended into it, and that is the St. Joseph School parcel on the south side of May Street. That is not presently zoned apartments. North of May Street, it is apartment A1. South of May Street, it is not. I don't have my zoning map with me to know whether it's to general residence or apartment or single residence. But did we decide to do that? I thought the only reason we were thinking of doing that at all was to have a contiguity to bring the zoning over and include the Stephen Palmer School. But apparently we're not doing that. We're not including the Stephen Palmer School.
No.
So why are we including a rezoning of St. Joseph's School property? And was that a mistake in the map?
No,
Or
we
did we
don't have,
deliberate?
we don't currently have A1 on the south side of Main Street.
No, but we decided to add it,
Yeah.
I think at the last meeting. We did not add,
Did not add Stephen
I
Palmer?
mean, that's what
No.
the decision was.
I don't recall that decision being made. People are clear, we do want to rezone St. Joseph's School.
I think we decided to be uniform in rezoning churches, schools, those kinds of buildings in the event, the unlikely and undesirable event that those businesses go away.
It would be excluded, it would be considered excluded land according to guidelines. I mean, it wouldn't be countable.
Right.
Because of it being a school. It doesn't, the guidelines don't expressly exclude churches, but they do exclude schools.
Right, understood.
So I just don't
Wasn't
see the
about-
point in,
Because we know that schools and churches do close. And if that were to happen, then we wanted to be able to use that land in a different use.
okay, well, as long as we're clear that that's what was decided, I thought perhaps it was a mistake.
No, that we talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
But the church is an existing A1, right?
The church has been made one for,
The church is an
Decades.
A1, yes.
yeah,
Okay, so it's just a school.
and the,
It's just
what's the
school.
building that's being renovated, the public, the
Oh, Everett Road,
administration
yeah.
building?
All
That's
the way
also
up.
ever, yeah,
Right.
that's it one. Yeah, Everett Road. Okay, I'll let, oh,
Any other
may I
thoughts?
ask one more question?
Map, maybe I can.
I saw that on the map that we're not extending the Chestnut Street Business Zone into the corner of the Hartney Graymont site. And I know that we've got a general plan that we're not going to rezone areas that are zoned now residential or, and did we deliberately decide not to extend that into that corner because of that reason?
yeah, sure.
So when we looked more closely at including that, part of it, if it catches the right of way and it then all of a sudden that parcel, I wish I had the GIS map, but that parcel, it catches right of way and it forces us to take something that comes all the way out here down like the Near Junction Rail area. And it just seemed to pick up that little piece, we'd have to gain so much more. So we just kind of made the decision to
Okay.
leave it out. It just
And
didn't
Gina
seem.
mentioned it last time too. I think that was one of the other pieces, but it was minor when we were talking. about
Yeah,
it.
it just didn't seem to make sense to include it. You don't gain anything by it.
So about the bonus, I keep going back to the rationale. So we have two scenarios. The first rationale, the first scenario, the base is meant for compliance. And I feel like all the work that, that we've done, and the housing group did before this, so like a lot of work, it's very justified, like we can defend everything at town meeting for the base one. The bonus, I don't think it's, I think if we're thinking about potential objections, it's not just about the numbers. The rationale for the bonus was more housing beyond just compliance. And I think this is a scenario, but there, like you could imagine so many others. And so the question at town meeting is this the right one? And in my mind, I can't justify, I mean, I don't have an answer for why this bonus is the right one. So I have a harder time justifying it than I do the base scenario right now. I don't know if that answers your question. That's all I'm thinking about it.
Well, I think we need to, within this group, come up with a map that we feel is true to the spirit of the law, but also one that we can stand behind. I mean, I would certainly like this committee to be unanimous, but I would also like one that every member felt like they could vote for individually. So that would be my choice.
So I just want to say again that I think that there's this ridiculous amount of increase in the unit capacity of apartment 1 and of Chestnut Street because of decisions that we made of density. So would we change that to make it, so that's the question that I have, because if the number might seem scary, but if it's in the same location and we feel comfortable that that height
Yeah.
or the density.
I just want to throw out there that I think that we did make the right choices for individual districts. And so it would be my preference, if we were trying to, if our objective was to reduce the number to make it more palatable in one way or another, I would prefer to take out a district than I would to reduce
Yes,
the dimensional requirements for any particular district, because I think, what we've tried to do here is to make producible housing. And if we lower the units or the height or the FAR, then we make them less producible. I would rather just have an area that we,
Well, I guess
don't
that's-
produce. Or, there are some areas here where we know that, it's very unlikely. So, for example, St. Joe's. Now, I think it's responsible to zone for eventualities. However, we know it's unlikely that St. Joe's is gonna turn into housing, so we could take it out, and that would have an enormous impact on the final number.
But that's
yeah,
a
so Chestnut
philosophy,
Street would
right.
probably have a better likelihood of being built.
So Chestnut Street would have a better likelihood of being built, and I think it makes it a real project that could produce some housing.
Yeah.
We, and I think there are lots of examples. I think we have the library included still, for example.
Yes, it is.
And we know, I mean, it's possible that the library at some point could be turned into housing, but it's very unlikely. So if we take it out of the map, then our housing number goes down,
Not the library.
because it's not.
Yeah,
because
but
it's-
anything that's
So
private.
anything that's
yeah.
counted.
But
There are some contiguity reasons, but also we have a lot of contiguity and our districts are big, so I think that we can get around that.
Yeah.
I just want to throw it out there that I would like not to damage the producibility of,
In the right places.
across
Yeah.
town for the
Right.
sake of lowering our number. Let's take out a piece that we think is unreasonable and lower our numbers that way instead of damaging.
So does
Yeah.
everyone agree with that philosophy? Because there's two philosophies. One is, and I agree with yours, is don't decimate the good work that we've done to date. It's just make it so in the places that really feel like there could be production of housing. And versus reduce some of the standards, right, of some of the areas that we're making more dense.
Can I ask, is there a concern, maybe this is a personal question, but is there a concern that as it is, the bonus would not pass a town meeting because the number's too high?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I
people
mean,
are-
people get sticker shock. I mean,
people are-
hopefully we'll socialize it enough that, that fear will go away, because we can explain everything that we've done here. But there are lots of people who aren't gonna listen to the explanation and even, and may just, have a different opinion, which is
Right.
fine. But of course, there's a concern that it won't pass. And I'd like to see it pass. I think, some Needham needs this.
Some people are concerned of just the 1,800 units, right, and knowing that 1,700 are already zoned, that makes them uncomfortable. So 4,000 is more than double. So,
Did you have something?
Just to clarify, we're making one map and in base, we're doing Charles Court. Does this one now include Charles Court? Or do we take it out? And have to take it out? So we just,
Does
You
it-
can't take it out of the base.
does it-
now.
you can't take, no, it stays in the
Does
base.
the bonus scenario include Charles Court?
the bonus scenario.
Not as it is right now.
Okay, does not, okay,
No.
so we didn't
But we
vote,
could.
our vote
Well,
didn't
that
put
would
it in,
increase
right?
it to 4,800.
Wait, we're going the wrong direction.
Okay.
But for clarity, it should be in there, it'd be odd. Back it out.
I guess that raises another
Opinions.
mechanical question.
No, it would still be in there, it just doesn't increase in size.
No, but it increased to 4180
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
up to 2.
Yeah,
So now you'd have to take more out of the other.
right, right. Thanks, Kevin.
I'll be leaving.
It just reminds me of a mechanical point. Would the bonus be presented as an add-on, like an expansion, or are these two separate things?
I think should be two separate things because you have different.
Too crazy.
Right.
Two separate articles.
Two separate articles.
Two separate articles, but two separate plans. And they don't necessarily have to layer, because there are opportunities for not layering. You don't have to have Charles River report or whatever it is on the second one.
Oh,
Right,
no.
right.
You don't wanna layer,
Yeah,
you just wanna have two
exactly.
separate plans that make sense.
So say
Wait a
you
minute,
present,
how's that gonna work?
say you present, exactly, say you present the first base, it's one article, second article is bonus. And the second one, are
It
you
shouldn't
saying,
be called bonus, I guess, is what I'm saying.
well, we know, but mechanically, like, if you pass the base, in the bonus, is there something that says this supersedes the base? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
yes.
You can only have one in effect,
Okay,
so.
But one map goes in front of the state. The state sees,
After town
Yes.
meeting.
yeah,
Yes.
But
no, even before.
No, in the summer. we
To
submit
submit it,
both.
yes, you're right,
submit.
correct, we'll send both
We'll
to
send both
the state
for-
for review
Yeah,
in the summer.
Okay, I thought it's just one map with everything to be
No.
the bonus
But if the-
we're bringing.
But if the first one if the state says the first one's good enough, there's not gonna be I don't know
Right.
why they
But
would
the second
ever.
one is different criteria in the same zones.
Right. but they're
You don't
looking
wanna
for
mix that,
minimums.
because
No.
it's
Oh, no, I
not,
know.
it's apples and
Yeah,
oranges.
Right.
So they are gonna look at both separately, the state, okay,
I think so, yeah.
right?
I mean,
Eric?
if I were you, I would submit both. If you're
Yeah,
planning on bringing
absolutely,
both.
we're definitely gonna submit
Yeah.
both.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're planning on bringing some form of both of these to town meeting, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't submit that during the 90-day early review period. It's just,
Okay, so
Yeah.
Charles Court isn't necessarily in the bonus,
yeah, we didn't model that
okay.
only because I was thinking we didn't need it, so we didn't put it in there. But for consistency, we certainly could. It's all modeled out. We just have to
I don't
add it
think that
in.
helps with
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
No,
the number.
Well, I just want to bring up something, at least with the Charles Court, it does bring something close to the Hersey area, which so many people are saying on both sides of wanting least and wanting more, want equity.
But it's existing.
Right, but that reasoning might not come through if they don't see it as added. Like with the base plan, I'm very glad that we added it because it's gonna make more people happy, but at least there's equity between all the commuter rail stations that will take away that argument that so many people have about including Mercy. So if you don't include it in the bonus plan, it's gonna be even more egregious. Why is so much being built in the vicinity of the 3 rail stations and nothing at the accessible to the Hersey?
I think that's a
That's
good
my
point,
reason.
Lisman, yeah.
Okay,
Well, I would just say that I had a similar reaction to, Natasha's about the number. But also in looking at the thing about where it is, so it's about 2,300 more than the other plan, but if you break it down, about 1,700 of that is between Chestnut Street, which I think should be reasonably less controversial, or should be less controversial, and then 700 is in where there's already a partner. So,
Because we're going from 2 stories,
3 to 4.
3 to 4, because we're adding 1 story. So people understand why.
and
Yeah.
the FAR changes, I
And
think.
for the community meeting, I think would be really helpful, because I don't think it's as scary as it sounds if you break it down into those areas.
No, I agree. I'm just hoping that people will listen to that.
right, but I do agree with you though, if there are places that are in
I
here,
agree also with what you're saying.
yeah, if there are places that are in here that really could be just taken out and would have no effect, or if we're just changing it because it just there's some things here that in the map that just don't make sense, like things that are zoned for, single family, but there's a church on it, or whatever, some of these anomalies we've seen in the past. So yeah, taking out some of these, like the church, would likely make no difference anyway, but just reduce the number.
All right, well, so do we
Because
feel like
otherwise
that's a good
artificially
strategy?
inflated.
And we could do it through the planning board and get community input if they want to add it later, for the areas that we don't think. So it's not like it's the done deal for those people that want a lot of housing, it's gonna be going back to the community.
Well, if the property turns over, I mean.
The property turns over, right?
Well, I would add also the standard is buildable, make projects that are buildable. And then also like a lively street scene. So I look at Crescent up in the upper, and like, we get rid of that? That's not on the main, is that an option?
People in that district have said that they are excluded from a lot of other zoning that other industrial areas. They don't get the benefit of other zoning in other industrial, business areas, excuse me.
Okay,
Wait, so you're saying they want that?
Well, in the
What
past,
do you?
in the past, people have said that they want to be treated similarly as other business areas. And so if we're focusing on business areas,
yeah, but what it does, it helps our map. It kicks, moves the ball up the field. We can reduce the number, make this more palatable, and keep the building in the vitality where it might do the most good, which is on Highland Ave and Chestnut. I mean, I would prioritize any district along Highland
Well,
and Chestnut.
I mean,
There were some, I thought, I think we did receive some interesting comments, from the housing group.
Housing Coalition.
Yeah, Needham Housing Coalition, of some adjustments to the map that in some ways would bring the numbers down. I mean, one of the suggestions they had made, even though we had settled on this map, was to think about how much of the center we wanted to retain for a mixed-use profile. And did we really want to include, for example, the Needham Bank and the Camellas block? Or should that be taken out and preserved for mixed-use development because it's closer to actually the core? And the other thing they pointed out, which made sense to me, was the other portion of the Center Business District, which I think was like, west of Maple, basically retaining that district west of Maple. Was currently, we only allow 3 stories. It's kind of stepping down for the neighborhood. Do you really want 4 stories at that outer edge?
I think those are good suggestions to look at, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah, that's okay.
in the A1
So,
district there?
so basically in the business, the center district. So they suggested removing Needham Bank and Camellas Block from the district. And so that basically just retains the center business district, and it's, and then the other one that they suggested was that you only allow standalone, standalone housing west of Maple. And that you step it down, I think, to 3 stories at that location. Reduce the maximum allowable height in those western parcels from 4 to 3 stories. And that's what the overlay does at that location, is 3 stories.
Yeah, I think those are good suggestions. If we don't need the numbers and.
Personally, I'm not crazy about those suggestions. My view is, you're gonna do housing, you do it where the terrain is and where the concentration of the businesses is. I've said this many, many times, but and I'm not gonna repeat myself, but I wasn't crazy about those suggestions.
Yeah, I do kind of feel like we want to bring more people into our downtown. That's, but, what do you all think?
It has to be a balance of reducing the number and put it in the right places.
So up at the top of Avery, where Avery School is in Webster Green.
Yeah.
That's already.
Yeah.
Well,
And Hamilton Highlands is already zoned Apartment A1.
Right.
The Avery isn't, but should be.
So do we need that in a bonus scenario? If that's not a bonus
Well,
scenario.
this increases the number.
Yeah, we did increase the number.
So if they ever wanted to
If they ever care.
fit anything in there, they could do that.
And it's not gonna be controversial either. The Avery's-
No, I'm thinking removing it from the bonus scenario to
Increase the unit.
Yeah, to make this,
lower the overall unit. 41.
But
Yeah.
I thought the whole, I thought the idea was to increase the amount so that if there was a desire at some point to
Yes,
renovate or rebuild a
But if it-
portion of it.
but if it doesn't
If it
pass,
doesn't
it'll
pass,
never
then
be
you
an
don't get
option.
anything.
Well, yeah.
It's better to get half loaf than. no
Right.
loaf at
Right,
all.
I
so,
get that.
and that's something, again, that we can look at later as a town, like, you know,
But I do think we could start by pulling out St. Joe's.
yeah.
But when, I
mean,
want
I
to
hate
make
to
a
do
point
that.
about that. Two things. St. John's has been a zone department A1 for 50 years.
But we wouldn't
And-
be changing that. We just would be excluding
And we are proposing in the scenario B to rezone 3 other churches that presently are not zoned, and that are currently in residential zones. So I think to say we're taking St. Joe's out, but we're zoning
think
you,
it's-
you, and
I
you,
think it's just the school.
we don't want to do
Just
that.
a school.
Talking about just the school.
No, I thought they were talking about the church.
Well, we can talk about anything.
I was talking about the church, the school, I
Yeah,
was
I
saying,
don't know.
why do we want to rezone the school? And then
Yeah,
it
I-
came out, well, maybe we don't want to rezone it, we want to bring the zoning for the church back to apartment as it was 50 years ago.
was
I mean,
thinking-
back to, excuse me, single-family residence as it was 50 years ago. Why do we want to do that? And especially if we're proposing, as I said, to rezone 3 other churches, the Unitarian, the Congregational, and Methodist.
So what does everyone think would be palatable number to be a target?
Well, what happens if we take out all those churches?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
that's a
not-
thought.
But you might not be getting many numbers, that's what I'm
Right.
saying, like, if we know what target number we're doing, then we see where where the majority, or how we can get there. But if we're gonna look at, well, if it's gonna get 15 units or 0 units, then.
Yeah, I just think those things have to go as a group. They're either in or they're out. They can't
Correct.
be half in, half out. That's all I'm saying.
Natasha, can I ask, is it easier, instead of thinking about the number directly, to think about other things like height or FAR? Like, if those are the objectionable things, changing those, then seeing what the number is. I mean,
Yeah, but I think you ruin buildability.
But that's gonna decimate
I mean,
it.
I don't.
How about
I
this?
agree, I agree.
I don't want to do that.
How about we pick off a few districts that seem possible targets? And then we can really defend it, even if the number is a bit high, we can say, you know, we really have
That's
trimmed
what I
this.
was saying at the beginning,
So
right?
let's-
Like,
And we can defend this, we can
we should
defend
go
this
through
map.
and look and see where are the targets that seem like it could be controversial.
If we
versus
take out
saying
St. Joe's
that's
School,
already housing.
right,
We're just adding one floor, and people wanted 5 stories, and we're only going to 4.
right, I can defend it. I would say take out St. Joe's School, then fine, if that's, if that,
But that might get you like 5 units versus, I mean, you know,
I don't know, but
I don't, I'm just saying, I think,
Or if it's only getting you 5 units and it might be controversial, is it worth even worth it?
I mean, I'm just throwing out 5 units, I don't know how many units, but it's a tiny little speck.
It's a pretty big parcel.
Can I just ask, this, because this has come up with the churches, I just want to understand, how are people thinking that there's an unfair, what do people think would be the unfairness? And why?
of keeping them in or keeping.
No, of like, that you'd have an overlay in some, but not in others.
Selective denominations.
But I mean, I know, but I guess what I'm getting at is, if you did it on church A and not on church B, are you assuming, let's see if I said that right. Are you assuming that the overlay is showing, positive favoritism or negative favoritism? I'm just trying to understand what,
Or both.
Yeah, we just want to treat them all the same.
I'm just saying, like, if the Lutheran church, which was just torn down, had an overlay,
This
the
is why I
Lutheran
think
church
we,
would have gotten a lot more money possibly
Yes,
for that property, which would then go into the charities
either
that
way,
it's going to, so.
regardless of whether it's a benefit or a detriment, the point is, because they're religious
Yeah, yeah.
institutions, we want to treat them all the same. But we do know that churches do go under. I mean, you know, of course, again, I hope this does not happen, but it does happen. And instead of, you know, potentially a multifamily
Yeah,
option, we have single family. You know, and so the question is, does this group need to prepare for that potential future or not? I mean, what do we feel like is responsible, I guess.
I mean, my suggestion is, so with the 141 units, we get 4,300 units, basically, is where we are if we, with Charles Court included for the second one, to be equitable with both. Okay, so we have 4,300 units. The numbers, when I look here, we have 1,089 in the A1 districts. And we've doubled the business, almost, yeah, and then there's Chestnut Street. So should we look at those areas? Because if you go to the other areas and decimate them, you only have 62 in Hillside Avenue business, so you're not gonna gain much by removing swaths of land there. Should we focus on the areas to see?
I'd go with that, but
I
I'd
can
keep
look at them again, but I don't.
till it's, I'd keep Rosemary till it's in, you might have to walk out.
Higher than Chestnut.
So maybe we should, okay, so
So
if
that
we
puts
look
the
at
dwelling units
apartment
per
one,
acre.
business and for right now, right? If you get rid of a little bit of the business.
Well, if you put a
because
limit on dwelling units per acre, because it's only being limited by the dimensions of the building. So maybe if you impose, a maximum number of dwelling units per acre, so it wasn't governed by building volume, determining the number of units, putting that threshold in there, bringing it down to something like 48.
What do you think, Eric? I'm just trying to figure out a way where we have a really thoughtful plan.
Yeah, I agree. I agree about I'm not on one side or the other, but I understood the conversation about the bonus to be about buildability, and I thought that's what the conversation was really about across everyone. It was about like what's actually going to produce it. And I think Heidi, you may have said it earlier, if we go district by district and reduce FAR or height or cap dwelling units, like you're chipping away at that buildability. So, personally, if you don't want to chip away at that buildability and you want to try to incentivize housing, then I do think either eliminating individual parcels or starting to eliminate districts would be potentially a better way to go. If you don't want to impact the buildability in Chestnut or Center Business or wherever you actually want to see housing happen, maybe approaching it from the district standpoint. But, in business, we do have a pretty aggressive height in FAR there, a height of 4 stories and an FAR of 2. So there may be some room to bring that more in line with the Avery Square or somewhere else. So you might be able to shave some units there. But like in A1, there's districts all over the map. So that may be a zoning district where you want to start to subtract either parcels or, districts. So I think the direction that you're heading makes sense.
I agree with what you were saying. I mean, just looking at specific parcels that probably won't be developed. Especially, and then the going from 2 to maybe 1.75 or 1.5. Because it is super dense. in those locations.
Yeah, and we can test that on the fly using the model. Like now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. I just can't test individual parcels because I have to figure out which ones they are and pull them out. But if you wanted to say what would happen in the business district, if we went from a 2.0 FAR to a 1.0, I can do that right now. We could see how much that would
Yeah.
change. So.
That one?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
let's see. What's, can someone remind me what we are currently at for FAR in business district?
Existing zoning.
Existing zoning doesn't have a FAR. It's the only district in the whole town that doesn't. It's governed under the existing zoning, it's just governed by dimensions.
It's lot coverage,
Lot coverage.
25% lot coverage.
25%.
There's no FAR.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
Right.
I think you introduced it in the bonus.
So you can't compare because
Yeah.
it doesn't exist.
So 25% lot coverage tells me.
Times 4 stories, isn't that 1?
Oh, but I think I thought,
So it's 1. So even if we,
Okay.
maybe it doesn't have to be 2, but
Maybe
it's
there's
1.5.
One and a
basements,
half.
I don't know.
Yeah,
What if we went to 1.5?
but you only have 485 units in there, right? So
So we have 2 SAR.
that's why,
and 4 stories in the Chesterfield.
yeah, you had the FAR 2 at set there, so maybe you could bring it down to 1.5.
For one,
what's
what's
current?
I'd
buildability?
say 1.6 is
1.6.
a little bit.
1.6 to be exact. 165.
I don't know, I'm not a big fan of chipping away.
I'm
'Cause
not.
I thought
yeah.
I thought a lot of this stuff made a lot of sense, like the
Yeah.
stuff that was on Lower Chestnut, for instance, I thought that
And I
made a lot
think,
of
I think there
sense.
needs to be,
And we
you know,
tried to-
especially in a place like Chestnut Street, I feel like there needs to be like a critical mass.
Yeah.
To make it not just a housing development, but like a neighborhood, you know, where it's gonna have services and, you know, vibe.
Right.
If we start chipping it away, I worry that it's gonna be like, all right, we're gonna plunk a giant development down there and it's just gonna sit there by itself.
Yeah.
And it's gonna, you know, stink.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be more inclined what you were saying before about, like, if we don't need the library for continuity, but it's still in the plan, I don't see why we would.
But does it have any units? The library?
doesn't-
No,
yeah,
so it
okay.
doesn't
It doesn't have
matter.
any,
So that'll actually
that doesn't do
push our
it.
numbers.
Spotlight.
But it connects the Episcopal Church, if we get rid of the library.
But the churches all count,
Excuse
and
me?
the
The
churches all
churches-
count, and they're all A1, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the
So taking
library,
those out would make a substantial difference.
well, it's possible, I suppose,
as a
that there
unit.
would still be
Yeah.
contiguity between a
No.
corner of the business
public
parcel
building. No, just public
across
building.
Highland Avenue
But not
to the
churches.
church site. Do you think that would be sufficient for
So,
contiguity?
and
If
they're-
the library
they're A1,
parcel were
so they're a
taken
high
out?
unit count. So taking them out would.
This is
So
the
going to
library
1.6
parcel.
and
that has
taking
that-
out the churches,
the teardrop.
where would that get?
This is the
Well, we
church.
can ask.
This is Highland
As
Avenue
a first
Yeah, I think it's,
try.
I think it's a benefit. for the
Business zone
congregations.
at that corner.
I agree.
And yeah, as long as we're just jumping the right away of Highland Ave, yeah,
Yeah.
that should work, yeah.
So the library could be taken out and the church
I
left
don't mean
in.
to interrupt,
Yeah.
but I wanna,
Well,
Ron,
Oh, yep.
I wanna understand better. You said, I probably wouldn't vote for this at town meeting. But what I hear you actually saying is, this is reasonable, this is reasonable, this is reasonable. So why is it that you would not vote for it at town meeting if you think it's reasonable?
Well, as I say, I think we should vote out of here unanimous.
I understand that.
In term, because I think on balance, I'm probably more of a comply guy. Comply, the whole thing is at sea, God knows where this has all been involved, in the last 2-3 years. And so, I think there's an argument, and I'm not trying to advocate for this, just answering your question.
Yeah.
An argument for, comply, see where things go. We have other things in motion in town in terms of the general residents in the Hersey. So we don't have a composite picture, but I'm not advocating for this, I'm just answering your question. So my view would be to, in 2024, comply. That, I think, me as a town meeting member, that would probably be my vote, as I see it today.
Right.
But that's more than I wanted to say. But that's-
No, but that's great.
Okay,
yeah.
fair enough.
I guess one thing I'd be inclined on is the, and this is different from what you think, is as far as some of the center business, if we were gonna take some things out, just because I think that, and I know I don't like to say this too much off the cuff, but like, oh, the planning board should take a look at this, because I know you guys have a lot to do. But I do think at some point, a reevaluation of what we've done, let's say 20 years ago, to create the mixed use, obviously has not worked as well as we had hoped. I mean, I still remember, I think it was Mo Handel at the time, talking about how, you know, we're hoping that a lot of this stuff is gonna happen.
Nothing has
Obviously,
happened.
Dedham.
It's been 14 years, yeah.
Yeah,
nothing has
and
happened.
not much has happened. So obviously, whatever is being done there is not working. And maybe it can't work. Maybe the economics just say it can't work, but I think we should look at that. And so if we took some of those spots off of the map for now,
But revisit it as a
and
holistic
and
approach.
hope that that could be revisited at some point, yeah, in a more comprehensive way.
Wasn't that what Lee
Throughout the
was,
downtown.
We
was
have
raising
recommended that
the
also.
Well, just,
suggestion
I
of
think
leaving the Camillus block
yeah, leaving the
alone?
Camellus block off, but if you're. and-
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably not a huge number, but.
But that's where the
Probably
best
drop-
housing should
dropping
be.
the
I mean,
highest
that's where you
and
want the
low
street
back.
vitality. That's like, it's right near the T-stop. It's great, and there's pizza downstairs.
But
Right, well, I know
but do you think that that lot is gonna really, like where the bank is,
Dedham Savings Bank and Needham Savings Bank, Needham Bank.
Well, I know that the interest that some people have is in the idea of multi-use versus just the standard.
Exactly.
I mean, I do, and I go back and forth on this, because on the one hand, I would really like to see the multi-use in more of these areas. There's a little bit of part of me that thinks that maybe a lot of that is nostalgia for something that's a time that's passed, you know, like waiting for the Woolworths to move in or something like that, you know? Maybe we're just past that. I mean, it's something I would like to see. I don't know enough to know if that's realistic.
Eric, I see you have your analysis on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
You want to-
So how many
what-
units?
I can't see any of those.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to read that to us.
Yeah,
At
no
least to
worries.
me.
So what did you want to try in business? It's 4 stories, 2.0 FAR right now.
We were saying 1.6, just to see. If it barely,
Right.
Fairly large.
Oh, what business zone are we talking about?
Sudbury Farms plan. That's
Oh,
the only, yeah, the only.
The one that
business-
is zoned
Yeah, the only
business.
business district left in town.
And we're talking
Um,
about the
that-
dimensions.
We lost like 40 units,
that's not
4-0.
much.
40. Yeah.
That's not much.
What happens if you put a dwelling unit per acre limit on it of 48?
Can I ask maybe a silly question? How many units are you looking to reduce?
But that's what I asked originally.
Yeah.
That cuts it in half.
Cuts it in half.
Yeah. Or, sorry, what,
I mean, I think it would be palatable to be under the 4,000, like, even if it's.
4,000 sounds like,
39,999.
4,000 sounds like a lot.
4,000
Little
sounds like a
stickers.
lot.
Retail math.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Under 4,000 seems palatable.
I wonder if
You didn't like that.
What?
You didn't like that?
No, I'm feeling tongue-tied. I'm feeling like I should go sit over there. Because I thought, well, you know, I don't need to accuse myself because we're not talking about dimensions. And I said there, I have serious concerns about the dimensions for the industrial zone on Hillside Avenue. So I feel as though I can't say anything.
Why?
Why? Because it's a conflict of interest.
No, I can speak up for that.
Okay, we'll speak up.
Yeah, there's a concern that if you build 4 stories on Hillside Avenue, there's gonna be a shading effect on the hill.
I mean, on the houses on the
Yes.
other
Okay.
Right,
That's the
fair.
concern.
Because of
You
the
have
terrain.
So-
You
Yeah.
have 3-story
The terrain.
industrial buildings there, and you do have a 4-story, but like 3.5 story right on the tracks, because my office used to be there.
I thought the height limit was 3 stories presently.
Wait, because they're on, because these.
Because they're on the hill.
That's
right.
the
Right.
pre-existing
They look
non-conforming
across
zone she's talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
It's- You're right, there's 3 stories in the district. That's the
Yeah.
limit under zoning. But
Is there anything there that's actually 3 stories?
Yes. The old TripAdvisor building, 460 Hillside, all those buildings are 3 stories, 3.5 stories.
And then across the street is
And they're pre-existing
2
non-conforming.
families, right?
Yes. But they're
Across
far
the street?
enough, they're far enough
No,
up
across
from
the
the
street
street.
is
Yeah.
apartment, is a condominium.
Correct, but
And
the ones
and then
that
you
are-
go up Hillside, it's a townhouse condominium.
although the TripAdvisor one is pretty close to the street. And their residence is right across. And that has a parking garage on the first level.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, now we're across the highway talking about TripAdvisor?
No, the
No,
old
no,
TripAdvisor
previous
building,
TripAdvisor.
the old 466, I think it's 460 Hillside is where I used to be,
Oh,
which was
mhm.
behind right by the tracks.
Oh, not the original.
The original,
The
the
original's by
original was on
Costas,
Hillside
right?
Avenue.
Okay.
It's the brick building right on Hillside.
Oh, yeah.
Am I wrong? I don't
It's
know.
not, it's just not.
Wasn't it
very-
over Costco?
Yeah.
Oh,
it
it's the
costs us-
second original.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not the current.
Know your TripAdvisors.
Okay, well, I think that's a fair concern.
Sure.
Would,
So if that
if,
one went
if
down.
3.5 exists though. I mean,
But not on the street, not on the street for a setback. So it's the Needham Community Council, and that's a two-story building. And then there's the second TripAdvisor building, which is three stories. And then offset by the tracks is 3.5. So it could be that it's 3 stories. Jean's leaving. Jean.
I just feel like,
If we did 3 stories on that block, what would that do?
Which one was it? Hillside Ave?
Yes. And then you could always do like.
I'm not sure it's gonna make,
like a
Hillside
difference.
Ave was only generating 62 units in the bonus.
Difference.
Right.
But-
I mean, but if it doesn't make any difference and people have strong feelings
Right.
about
Yeah.
shading effect, then we might as well take it down.
Correct,
Right, like,
Okay,
we don't want
And I feel
People feel bad
comfortable with
about it.
that.
right.
for no benefit, or
Right,
little
because the-
benefit,
Yeah.
so.
That's why I was saying if we go district, I mean, it might be that we're making huge changes that don't make much difference, but that they're impactful in other ways, right?
so then is Avery Square contiguous to anything? Oh, no, we got it. It goes north of it.
Okay, so wait, before we move on though, we've just talked about the shading effect and possibly capping Hillside
To 3 stories.
at 2
Right,
stories,
okay.
are we?
Hillside Industrial or Hillside Avenue? 'Cause Hillside Avenue
Hillside-
Business. Sorry, go ahead.
Hillside Industrial.
That's
Okay, sorry, yeah.
So is that a bigger number than?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking about Hillside Avenue Business.
So what's the number if we change it?
Right now, it is 490. And if we go to 490, so that's really not,
It doesn't
That's not-
change.
that's not-
What,
How
how
can
could
that
one
change?
floor,
Maybe the FAR is
It's-
controlling.
it's probably the dwelling units per acre are the controlling factor.
so what is it right now?
Right now, I think it's set at 30.
We don't care about that.
No, we didn't set a number. I
We're
think that's
reassessing.
It's
the
30.
shading effect. So if that's the issue, let's stick to that.
So the issue, if we wanted to change the height, that has no impact going from 4 to 3, so that's fine on unit count. If you want to change the unit count, we would need to change the dwelling units per acre. Right now, it's set at 36 in the model, and that's really what's driving the 490 units. If you look at what the density is in the summary table, it's 35 units per acre, so that tells me that it's really the dwelling units per acre that's driving the units. But if your concern is height, then we're fine. We can move it from 4 to 3,
Okay.
Yeah,
and it has no impact.
Well,
I
okay,
haven't moved the
but
number,
if
but
we're, if we change the height, it's unlikely that we would get the same number of units, even if we're not specifying that. So wouldn't we want?
Because of the FAR? Is that why we're not? And the units per acre. So what is the FAR right now?
In the model, the FAR in that district is set at 1.0.
Yeah,
Okay, so how do we feel about lowering that height
yeah,
to deal with the potential
I
shade?
think you should because it's the tallest area next to.
I mean, I feel fine with that. Everyone else? We need to like officially vote on this, given that we voted on it last week.
sure.
Okay,
Move that we lower one level. And Hillside Industrial from 4 stories to 3 stories.
I
Second.
second the motion.
Okay.
okay, any discussion further?
You can do voice votes if you want to do it faster. But this would be on both sides of the street or?
It's only
It's
one
only
side of the
one
street.
side of the
It
street.
is just on the.
It's on Hillside Ave and
Yeah.
it's the.
Right, yeah,
The magenta.
like you're saying, the community council and north.
That side of the street,
Yeah,
yeah.
that area, okay.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You're opposed, yeah. Do
You want
you
4
want to
stories.
discuss or?
No,
Right,
Okay.
And what,
Jeannie,
so
can go
what,
back?
You can come back.
Come back.
so one other
Miss you.
question, the zone above it, which is where the,
Business Hillside?
yeah, the business, which is where, the senior center is. If Hillside Ave, which is the same street, is 3 stories, what did we say for that one?
But that's not on. Right there, that's not the same. Issue as Hillside over here. There's a marked incline or decline on this side of West Street and not so much on the other side.
Yeah,
They're at the same,
it's a flat. It's flat.
Yeah, correct. No, it is flat, but, these are smaller houses as well. So you still have the shadow, because this is north, so you get morning shadow in the entire street. Right now, the senior center is only 2.5 stories high, or 2 stories, right?
What we have now in the bonus scenario zoning parameters for Hillside Avenue business is 3 height.
Okay, so then it goes along with it, okay.
It's
I
a-
just wanted to
it's a
make
dwelling
sure that
unit
we're
breaker
apples and
between
apples.
between the two. So in Hillside, I think you said it at 24, and in the straight industrial, you said it at 36.
So why did we do that, the 24 versus the 36? Because it was 4 stories? Probably because it's current residential neighborhood. So,
Yes, probably linked to the 4th story.
so if we get it down to 24 to be the same, because it's 3 stories, that would help with the,
Yeah, I think based on the last meeting, the thinking was treating Hillside Industrial and Crescent Industrial a little bit different because Crescent was kind of more tucked within some of those neighborhoods and a little further out, whereas Hillside was more along the Highland Avenue rail corridor that we've been talking about. I think that's why there was a difference in the height as well as in the dwelling units per acre.
but since we went down to 3, should we look at the dwelling units per acre so that it's the same as,
We can, sure.
just to see?
Yeah.
What does that yield?
It's 490.
36 to 24, is that what you said? Lee?
Yes, 24 was what we did in the other 2 districts.
So we go from 490 to 325.
That seems like a bigger,
Yeah,
for everybody else to feel comfortable with that.
and they still build, it's still buildable projects.
I guess that's the question. Do you think that's still buildable? Yeah, we think so.
I'm sorry, I
All
missed
right,
that.
summarize,
We
can we summarize
What's
this?
the proposed change?
Yeah, can we summarize the proposed change here? I'm not sure I caught it all.
Business Hillside is going from,
No, industrial Hillside. It was 4 stories. You just said go to 3.
Right, lower units.
The FAR will stay at 1, so I didn't hear any discussion on that. And dwelling units per acre in that industrial district will go from 36 to 24,
Which is the same as,
which is the same as Hillside Avenue Business and Crescent Industrial.
correct, how do you make them all equal? Okay.
okay,
And we reduce it by 130 something?
Yeah.
136.
And the only difference between the 2 industrial districts now is Crescent Industrial has an FAR of 0.75, whereas Hillside Industrial has an FAR of 1.
But that's because it's in a neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think we want to change that.
no,
Okay, and our net loss is what?
Went from 490 to 325, so
490 to 325.
125, 175 units.
Okay.
So,
so
so
under,
we're at 4,300 because we added the Charles.
right, okay.
So now we have, right? We have 4160 plus 141.
So we're almost even now.
So we're almost even, back to where we were at the beginning of the
Right.
night. So
Do you
then,
want a motion to
so
do that?
a motion
To do
to,
that?
okay, so a motion for the Hillside Industrial to go from 4 stories to 3 stories. I think we already did that one.
We did.
But we didn't vote.
Right.
Oh, we voted, okay.
Yeah, we did.
And then also to reduce it, the units from 36 to 24 per acre.
Second.
All right, I see some.
I see.
Any
That seems
discussion?
okay. You said that seemed okay?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Recuse.
Okay.
Any nays?
Yes, I'm against.
Okay,
But
but,
it's, I'm gonna be outvoted, but I'm against it.
okay, but I think it's helpful for us when there's a call for discussion, for you to tell us why you're opposed. 'cause
Fair enough. I'm not
that's-
trying to, the reason I opposed to it is on the view that that is a developed area and it's already an intensely developed area that is ever used in a residential way. It's going to require some things. And so from my perspective, the 36 creates the value.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
No, I'm not arguing. just
No,
disclosing.
because you brought it up, on Chestnut, one side of the street being lower than the other.
Oh, true.
So it's kind of, I feel like it's the same
It's the
thing,
same thing here.
a little bit, because the residents on the street feel like it's looming over them, and Chestnut's flat. I'm just gonna throw that out.
Fair enough, fair enough. You persuaded me, I'll withdraw my vote. I'll go unanimous. I'll go unanimous.
That was intense.
All right.
All right. So all of this is good. However, we haven't actually made any progress from where
We
we
need to
started.
get 160 more.
So,
Okay.
yes, Josh?
I mean, to me, it feels a bit arbitrary,
It does.
so
Well, it shouldn't be, that's why I think we need to figure out where it makes sense if we want to reduce it. If people think
Look, I mean, I think-
4,160 is fine.
I think it's realistic to say that people are gonna be, have their hair blown back by this number. And it's also fair to say that we need to get this past town meeting. And frankly, we'd love for people residents at large, to buy into this. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I feel the same way. I feel like reducing the number so that people don't get sticker shock is, playing to an element that we don't necessarily want to do. Because I think all of this is really thoughtful, but we also want it to pass. So where is the balance? I mean, if you have a suggestion, I would love to hear it, because I don't know.
okay, so when I read the comments of people with very specific objections,
Mhm.
I would suggest we look at those specific objections and see if those can be cured. Because I think people are going to vote against this for very specific reasons. Maybe the number will be one of those reasons, but I think maybe they don't like this specific area or this parcel. I think those,
Well, so we're asking for suggestions about parcels or areas to take out. So if you know of some, then please bring them up.
so, okay. The one that I've heard, but I know people feel very differently about this, in the Hartney Green, that was raised.
Yeah, I do feel though, like that was raised in the context of the previous plan, which was considerably higher and had more parking. So I wonder if we've talked about that objection or overcome that objection to some degree versus the old plan.
The objections that I've heard, yes, that's one. The entrance and egress, just the geography or the way the parcel is laid out, the entrance is between two rail bridges.
Yeah.
So that
It's
makes
a
it
disaster,
just
just, yeah,
very
it's a hard
difficult.
spot, it's a hard spot.
Yeah.
But it has to be, the whole area has to be, the same, right? You can't break a district. can you?
Parcel.
A parcel, you can't.
Oh, zone of one single parcel, two
Yeah.
different ways. Still waiting on an answer,
No.
No,
from
but
another
that wouldn't
town
be a problem.
on that, but I don't believe, as of right now, we have not been encouraging that approach.
Okay, okay, so it's just a list.
All right, next.
Do you want it? Sorry, what, so,
Sorry, I'm listening, I just.
no, could we just make sure we hear, just because open meeting law, I think we need to all hear what's going on. I didn't hear.
We're talking about a comment that was made regarding what you're.
Oh, okay,
confirming
okay,
the
okay.
numbers that were talked about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to just focus on that or the other objections that I've heard?
No.
I mean, I
wanna hear your
think this
objection.
is what the conversation
Yeah.
is bringing up the parcels that we think we could reasonably look at as part of the map. So
Sure.
So
Bring it.
the other objection that I've heard from the comments is the current Avery Carter building. That, I mean, it's the biggest objection I've heard really doesn't have that much to do with the location, but about actually the current owners. I'm not really comfortable going down that type of argument, but that is something I've heard, and I'm sure people will have strong feelings about that.
sure, I agree with that. Although I don't think, I mean, I agree with your assessment that that's not the right route to take. I think our zoning makes sense, though, there, what we've done there makes sense.
I have a question about the Carters, on the idea that the owner would just as soon tear it down, which I think would be very sad. Can we, or and have we proposed, I mean, I'm just trying to get it straight, that it would be 3 stories, but there could be a special permit to go to 4 stories, so that would kind of encourage.
We made it 4 stories there, right?
I mean, 4-story,
I think-
right, yeah.
No, we did exactly what
We did
Jean
just
said.
what she said.
Oh,
We
yeah.
did 3 stories by right, and it's the special
story
permits on the
special
height of the stories.
So it's,
On the
there
FAR
would be,
and
there
on
would
the
be
high-
some
and the high.
encouragement to keeping the
Correct.
existing building
And
to
special
get the
permit
4th
oversight.
story by seeking the special permit. Maybe it's only a minor encouragement.
Every
Or they'll
proposal-
come in and they'll talk about the special permit to do a 4-story building at higher FAR.
Right.
I mean, it's not linked to the existing building. I mean, it's basically 3
Yeah.
stories as of right, and you can have an extra height by special
Oh.
permit,
So,
and the use is as of right.
I guess what I was thinking is, that because we haven't done this, is to link the special permit for a 4th story only if if the existing building were preserved.
I don't feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
That building has been.
It's a
sitting there
disaster
empty for
inside.
a long
It's a
time. I don't
huge
think that we
mess.
have
I've
the
been inside
expertise
it,
to
yeah.
determine if the building is viable. I mean,
We're just
you know.
here to do zoning, we're
It's-
not here
I
to
don't-
rezone special buildings.
And I think that does kind of get into spot zoning, because we're making different requirements for that building than any other in town. I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable with that.
And, I'm gonna say something on your side, on your side, and going along with what you said about it's a disaster. I don't think it's a disaster in the sense that it's so run down. It's only very difficult when you have an industrial building that's has certain dimensions, and you try to make an apartment out of it with windows and so forth. And there's big wasted space in the middle. What do you do with it? It's difficult.
Yeah.
So maybe this idea that we should preserve the building shouldn't be pursued. But I don't know. I just feel bad about this. This town has no historic districts presently. And it's a shame we don't, because we do have history. Oh, well.
But I think you're right, but I think it's a completely different story, and that would open up a can of worms, and it would feel like it wouldn't be equitable to all the other zoning that we're doing.
Okay.
So I just, want to know, because we're trying to cut down numbers, and I think we had mentioned, Josh started to mention some comments that he read. I have not read all the comments, it's just, on a nice time schedule, but I read some. But I haven't read any comments that specifically object to certain things being included, but it could be because they don't know our plan yet. And we're gonna have a public meeting in March, is it March 28th?
Right, and then we'll get the
And
feedback.
I think at that meeting, we'll get the feedback and we'll know what to cut back on and bring the numbers down.
But this is what Heidi and I were talking, is the feedback that we got that everybody had in their packet, so we weren't talking about anything that was, Chrissy. That, we had said 1784 for A, 2630 for B, and 4782 for C. And we had people that wanted A or C with B as number 2, B being in. That's why I think anything over 4,000 would discourage the people from A, let's say, to not be a B anymore, right? And so that's why my perspective is if we can get it under 4,000, it would make it, and be thoughtful about how we're doing it. It would make it more palatable as an option rather than for those that are considering more than just the basic. I don't know if everybody disagrees or.
That's fine. I like that, just with the caveat that we're not reducing the buildability eventually.
Correct.
Can I just ask, can we just look at what the effect would be of removing the churches?
Okay,
Doing what?
the
Removing
congregation,
the churches.
Sure.
We
Removing
just
the
see what the
churches.
unit count change would be if we removed the churches.
And just because we remove it doesn't mean that we can't study that later.
Yep.
Through the
Yeah,
planning board,
I
'cause
just want to see what the difference is. I just want to have that information.
I would have to
that's harder to.
dig through, well, it's actually not that many.
it's
They're all
A1.
A1, right?
Yeah,
they're
Are
all-
you talking about the 3 churches that would be newly put in
Correct.
In A1, yeah,
And well, then also do we take St. Joe's out? They,
yeah, are you also
the school,
talking
we take the
about-
school out, but do we take St. Joe's out?
Yeah, do we-
Well, all the churches all have to be treated the same.
Yeah.
But
So
St.
it's-
Joe's is currently in an A1.
it's been in A1 forever, so.
So it's not gonna change anything. So
Right.
we don't have to worry about.
But the Holy
taking it
Family
out of the
lives there.
map. We're not taking it off the face of the earth.
All right.
We're just seeing how it
To
changes.
see
the
how it
unit
looks if we
count.
take them all out. If we
we're
don't,
not
if we
changing-
don't
Right.
propose rezoning the Methodists, the Unitarians and the Congregationalists, we're not gonna do them. And we're gonna take St. Joe's out the way it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanna see. what the
Rezone
difference
it
is.
to single family. Is that what we're
I'm
talking?
not suggesting we change
rezoning.
any existing zoning. I'm
All
just
right,
saying
you're not.
we take it out of the
We
map.
take it out of the map.
Take it out of MBTA, so.
If you're telling me it's
Not
already
apply-
A1, we're not gonna
apply
change
for
the zoning.
approval of it through MBTA, even though it's zoned for apartment A1.
That's
Just
for
to
both.
That's what we're saying, if we can reduce.
Just to change the
what's already
numbers.
there.
Just to see what the unit count.
Yeah,
So what do
okay.
we got?
So I'll need some help just identifying them, because I don't,
Oh,
I don't know,
'Cause you don't-
yeah, I don't
you need
know.
the address of all of them?
I can kind of.
May and Highland.
What is, so can I'll just read them off. Is First Methodist one of the churches?
I mean,
Carter Methodist.
Yeah.
Carter
I
Methodist,
think
yeah.
that's the one that's up north, the farthest north.
It's on Highland.
Oh, no.
Do you have addresses? It'd be on Highland.
It's on, yeah, oh, yeah.
All the ones that.
It's at the corner of Highland and Honeywell, right?
But I don't think. he
Yeah,
has
I don't have
water.
that. So just tell me, if the owner is First Methodist, should I take it out?
Yes,
First Methodist is,
yes.
yeah,
Christ Church?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. Roman Catholic?
St. Joe's,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Evangelical Church of the Evangelical Congregation?
Where's that?
No, I think that's far off the center. I think that's not in the center.
That might be like Greendale.
What?
Is that on Greendale?
Not in the.
I think it is on Greendale, yeah.
Why would that be in his scope?
The other one would be the Unitarian University.
It's on Great Plain Avenue?
It's the,
What Unitarian Universalist, is that its address?
that's
on
Where's
Great
the
better
Plain?
than
First Baptist Church? Is that the First Baptist Church?
Yes, and
Great
that's
Plain
not in.
Avenue.
Yeah, but the Baptist, we haven't shown the
They're not in.
Baptist
Yeah.
as a rezoned site. We haven't shown that, but we've shown Unitarian Universalist, which is either on Great Plain Avenue or on,
Dedham,
On
so,
Dedham.
Oh, but that's in the center, that wasn't zone A1.
Right.
Oh,
Right, it's in the center.
If this is it,
It's not gonna show, it's not
Evangelical
gonna show up as
Baptist
A1.
Church.
is it presently zoned business center, the church?
it doesn't really matter for this
Yeah.
discussion, because
Oh.
what I'm hearing you say is if it's a church, take it out.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so is that a church?
yes.
Yes.
Great, let's take it out.
Yes.
Great,
Yes.
excellent.
And it should be probably like 40 that I have or something.
All right, in Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Boston,
Yeah,
on Pickering Street.
Yeah.
Yes.
St. Joe's.
That's it.
Pickering Street is the school. The
and
church
we
is,
take the school out too.
the
Yes.
church is
Sure,
on,
take the school out.
Highland
You know,
Avenue.
It's just information gathering.
Yes.
I think it's worthwhile
Churches
to
on
understand what
Highland
the effect would be, because these are buildings we don't expect to change into housing. And so taking them off the map, and seeing what the effect is, maybe that this means that our zones where we want to have housing can be protected. We don't have to chip away at our dimensionals and we can leave those things. Worst case, it doesn't, we put them back. We're not.
The church I grew up in is currently being built into housing right now. In Dorchester, also Richard Terrace.
Same to the church I grew up in.
Moving from 1089 to 803,
Maybe
That's
50
it.
years.
so that's 286,
So that's-
286 units.
To take
Well,
all
you
those
need it to
out?
be at 160 less, so that does it.
So that does it. So what, to do, could you?
Thank God.
Grab the Unitarian, grab the Unitarian in the center too. You can take them all out.
That's a good one. We had the Thursday.
I'm just not convinced that-
Unitarian Universalist, that was in your crawler
I'm
district.
not convinced that the delta.
Did you get St.
was-
Oh,
Joe's?
was it?
It's 1382 Highland.
Whether it's 39.99.
Yeah, I got St. Joe's. If it was an A1, yeah.
In the retail
true.
world, I don't know, they seem to think that works in retail, so I don't know.
Well, you
What
look
do I know?
trouble.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. If anyone here has a suggestion about a way to preserve the thoughtful job that we have done and get this plan past town meeting, now is the time to speak. So I agree that it's totally arbitrary. I think I started the meeting saying that I think this is arbitrary and not a substantive idea. However, I still want to get what we can get. So, and my concern, partially because of the reaction of members of this group, is that people are gonna get sticker shock from this number. And so if there's a way that we can reduce the number and keep people listening long enough to see that we've done a thoughtful job zoning, I think that's worth it, but speak now.
What were the other
Right.
ones?
Speak now,
Speak now.
Lee, I think it was Lee who raised the issue because it was communicated to us very carefully by the Housing Needham Coalition that the Camellis block should not be a zone for standalone multifamily housing. And we talked about it, but we didn't vote on it. I think we should vote on it. Somebody should make a motion. I move that we delete the Camellis, the block between the railroad right of way and Nahoyden Street on the north side, which includes Camellis Restaurant, Needham Bank and Dedham Savings Bank, that we remove that.
Can I just confirm then, we clarify it, yes. So what would the conditions there be? Like, if we change it from, multifamily housing,
Keep it zoned the way it is,
which is, can somebody remind me? how-
which it allows mixed use, but not standalone
And what's
multifamily.
the height?
Let me check if it's 3 or 4.
It was special permit.
Does anyone consume into that area? If not, it's okay too.
And I think, the argument that is made by Needham
3.
is, by the group that advocates for this, is that it makes for a more thriving downtown to have retail, restaurants, et cetera, on the ground floor, and we don't want that particularly for this important block right near the center.
So is there a contiguity issue?
Yeah, I was just gonna
if we
ask,
remove
was
it?
that,
We took out A1 for the Congregational Church.
No, the A1 shows, the A1 does not show that block, and we have contiguity with the, I mean, with the base scenario,
on the
the
south
base
side of
scenario.
Great Plain,
That, see where that little train is? That blue piece comes all the way down to Great Plain Avenue and connects with the industrial piece, does it not?
Yeah, well, what are we, out of the pink, what are we taking? I'm not sure what we're taking out.
The part north of Great Plain Ave.
Part north of Great
This
Plain
block
Avenue.
here?
Yeah, yeah, the way it is taken out in the base scenario,
Yeah, we have continuity here,
exactly,
so we don't have to worry about that.
yeah,
Because that strings then this
East
together.
west.
yeah. So we can still have it on the south side, but
Yeah,
not on
just-
the north side.
From a contiguity standpoint, you could do
Yeah.
that.
So that's my motion, that we take that pink piece that's on the north side of Great Plain Avenue
Can I ask a question?
out of our proposal.
Why are those specific parcels different than the rest of the pink area?
They are closer to the downtown. The other pink area is just a kind of a further block away. I'm trying to decide how to make the argument that was presented by others here.
Well, I think it's right on the primary, it's right on the primary street, it's right on Great Plain Avenue, it's fronting right on the street. The others are sitting back behind the storefronts. I mean, we had a whole conversation about whether to keep the Unitarian church in or out. We kept it in because it was a church, but it effectively has frontage right on Great Plain Avenue. So the biggest block is basically sitting behind your storefronts fronting along the Great Plain Avenue corridor. And this is just kind of an extension of that commercial corridor, preserving it.
So the only pink that would be, if this were taken out, the only pink remaining would be the one between Dedham and Chestnut and was that Lincoln?
I think, no, also on the other side of the street,
We get rid of the pink.
well, Jean got rid of the pink, I think, between, the railroad tracks and the Hoyden on, what is that, the north
Yeah.
side of the street? On the other side of the street, there's also pink.
But
Yeah.
that's the post office, right? I mean,
That's-
No, that's Michelson's, isn't it?
yeah, the post office.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
block,
it's
that block was
Oh, right, that's
included, and that
post
block was included at 4 stories, which is higher than the rest of that district,
But
so.
does that post office, can we count that? Not federal,
Struggle.
Property?
That's a good question.
because if it can't count, let's you can take it out.
Yeah,
I would make a motion to remove that district. The pink district right now at the center of town.
On both sides of the street
yes,
are.
center business.
Let's just, let's
Business
just
center.
resolve the question of whether that the post office can even count. As the United States government, it's owned by the US government, so.
Um,
I think it's probably does have the only reason.
You
that
can't
I
use,
say this-
yeah, state
I
or
mean, you can't
town.
state town.
You
land,
can't, it's
but you
excluded.
Right, so
So,
it's
so
good.
then your motion is,
So we can't
makes a
count
lot of
it in.
sense.
Makes
Right.
sense. So second,
It would break down.
Well, I think we
And
need
that
to
would include
rethink the
your-
downtown.
your-
It's not like this is the end of it. It's like, I think we need to do that in a more thoughtful way.
okay.
It would break continuity to the.
To the church.
Church, yeah.
But the church is
But the
gone.
church
But
is
we just
gone.
took
The church is gone, we removed all the churches.
Church out.
Yeah.
So are you,
Well, we haven't, but if we
Well,
remove all
we
the
voted
churches.
on it, we haven't
Right.
decided anything,
Right,
we're just
right.
talking about it.
Right.
so is the proposal that's on the table now, would be, if that's the proposal, to take this entire pink piece out?
Yes.
All that? Okay,
Yes.
so then we lose this.
Which
Well,
we already did.
Because that's one of the churches.
Like, at that point, is it even worth having this, given people are
But
uncertain?
that's behind.
That's fine, I'm good with that.
That's different.
Most of
The
it's
fire
town- most of
station
it's-
that we just built, that's
It's
not gonna
parking
go
lot.
anywhere.
Most of it's town
No,
park.
the parking lots, I think, are worth.
No, it's
Yeah.
developed differently presently. But I take my motion back because the motion now is that entire pink on both sides of Great
Right.
Plain Avenue,
Business center,
right?
okay.
Okay.
Or
It would-
also known as business center.
So I'm gonna second your motion.
Yeah, please.
Can I say,
Second.
we've gone back and forth
Right.
multiple times on the downtown area. and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I really made the earlier approach of the crawler to preserve the retail. And in my mind, to now take away what is shown there is in essence to say, we're insulating the downtown area from the MBTA Act, which personally I think makes zero sense. I think where you want the MBTA, I think you want it concentrated in areas where people will come and live and support the retail. And I don't think they'll support the retail when they live a half a mile away. I've made this argument before. Windy day like today, no one's walking a half mile for a pizza. They're walking 200 feet. So my view is, that having MBTA in the downtown area is a positive. So
Right. I'm sympathetic to that, but the problem is that then it will be, someone could build residential only.
Right.
And blow away all the commercial. And that would break up the flow of the downtown. It'd be commercial, and then walk another 200 yards to something.
But more people supports retail.
Yes, and I would love them to be above it all.
It's
But
not the
here-
most vibrant downtown at the moment. It's not dying, but it can use a little.
Right. I'm sympathetic to that, yeah. But I think we need commercial, to insist that commercials underneath. And we can do
In
that.
some areas.
Yeah, and that-
You can, remember, we're not precluding,
But MBTA would.
no, well, no. Somebody could still do.
Yeah, you could do it, yes, but,
So if the market demanded it, somebody could.
right, but the same reason we did the cutout around, Town Hall and on Chapel Street was to preserve that there wouldn't be just a residential block at Harvey's, because that would smother the downtown.
And one of the surveys asked the entire community what they thought about the housing in the downtown center business district, and they said that they would prefer to leave it as commercial. The community, I'm just bringing that up because that could sway, we can still bring it up if we do a study of that area and still change it at that time.
Yeah, and I would hope that a builder would do commercial first floor, that's the dream. But I would want to really ensure that that would happen. And the current zoning forces that.
This conversation reminds me of the conversation we had last time. Like, in my mind, and I know that the committee voted differently, but in my mind, not everything has to go through MBTA. So, like, if you want commercial on the first floor, if you want to have that happen, and ensure that happens, it can't be part of MBTA. But at the same time, the votes of all this committee have been consistent with keeping it in. So I'm very torn about how I would.
But that was before we saw that we had 4,300 units. And we were trying to create density, more density, but it feels like it might not be palatable, especially if the community already said that area. And I don't disagree, Ron, I'm just trying to, but I do think that that's an area that's controversial, so, with the community. So we want to make sure that all the other areas have more opportunity. Eric, did you have something?
I was just gonna say, if you're talking about center residential, you might as well talk about all of it, because what's gonna be left, it's almost all town parking lots. Those are all excluded, so it's like, if you're gonna take it out, honestly, why leave that in there? Just
Can you
take
try
it
the
all out.
number? What's the number? What do we get?
If you take all of it out,
Yeah,
it's 245 units or whatever it was.
okay.
Yeah, 264, if we took the whole pink area out.
Just for an understanding, like if we took out, Eric, the Avery School and the Webster Green or Webster Green, we just took that A1 zone out, the furthest north.
The one that we had added a couple meetings ago.
Yeah, if we just took that out, what would that do?
Well, that's in our base scenario.
Which I don't feel that strongly that if it's in base, it has to be in bonus. That's just my opinion. I'm just thinking of presentation.
Well, that, checking it out might reduce the numbers, but it's not in itself controversial because it's already developed from the department, so people would not, there wouldn't be any comment in opposition to it.
But then it would, but because it's there, it may never get developed, so if there's like this, right?
Yes, but it does draw neighbors who would say, but it could be.
What,
I mean, that's the case with the St. Joe's neighborhood too, like what you could.
oh, no, wait a minute, St. Joe's could be maybe if they're closed, but these are already fully developed
Right, okay.
for, in for Avery, it's a condominium.
Right.
The idea that all the owners of the condominium are gonna get together and say, let's tear it down.
Right.
It's not gonna happen. I mean, if we just need to play a game and say, well, reducing the numbers so it doesn't look so bad, we could do that, but it doesn't make any
What's,
real difference.
Hamilton Highlands looks like it's about 154. I was trying to figure out which parcel is Avery. I'm not 100% sure. Is that town-owned?
No, it's a condominium.
No, it's condo.
Okay,
It used to be.
The field next to it.
And
is
it's right
town.
across the street from Hamilton Highlands.
right, yeah, just. They don't give us the address in the MBTA database, it's very annoying.
And I don't even know if
we
it's
can look it up.
Do you know happen to know who owns it?
the members of the condominium unit owners. But is it called Avery, a condominium? I'm not
It's
sure.
757 Highland Ave.
Have you got it?
It's gotta be this one. So in total, probably just over 200 units.
So that's another strategy.
Yeah, 760 higher now, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Great parcel, but I was thinking, yes, a little school.
So
makes
we have
sense.
multiple strategies. I think we need to
Sure.
make some decisions. I don't know how to do that.
Okay, so the first one was,
We're gonna take a vote on your motion.
so the
Oh,
churches.
yeah.
Seconded.
We
Church,
didn't
church
talk
is
about the
done.
churches.
We did churches.
Well, we talked about it. We didn't vote on it.
All right.
So there are a couple
Make a
of them.
decision.
One is, right,
Try it.
one is the churches, so I move that we remove the churches, knowing that we can review it later as a town, right? But for the MBT communities.
Second.
I just wanna, so that's one portion, but we still then wanted to reduce slightly more, correct? This is why we started
Yes.
talking about
The churches,
So I kind of wanna know what the other piece is gonna be.
right, so let's talk about the churches would remove how much again? Sorry. I don't remember.
286.
Yeah.
Okay, so the churches removed, so we were, big picture here is that we were at 44,300. And then, that includes, Charles Cordy's condominium. So then we made a reduction of, didn't we make a reduction in Nita
Yes.
Industrial?
In the Hillside Industrial.
Industrial. Yeah, hillside.
And that was 100 and.
Yeah, I think give or take, we're like up about 10 units, something like that after
So
doing
we're
that.
back to 160, 4160.
Basically,
we
yeah,
said.
so, yeah, close,
Okay,
yeah.
so we're back at 4160. So the churches removed 286 units. And then the other thing that we looked at was we meet at the center district, right, business center district. And that
264.
264. And then we discussed,
The A1. The Hillside, the Avery School
Avery
and,
School.
A1 Avery School is
that plus, help me,
Hamilton.
Hamilton Highlands
Hamilton.
is about 200. 205.
Okay, so if we took them all, I'm just gonna go one by one. If we took them all, we would be at 4160. We would be at 3410 if we took them all. If we only took the center and the church, we would be at 3610. And if we removed only Avery and Hamilton, it's about the same, minus 200, so 3960.
Can you remind me the reason for removing Hamilton?
And Avery,
I think it's because it doesn't change the facts on the ground, but does lower the unit count.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
I like the 3410 number. I can defend the map. Yeah, you can defend it.
And just to,
so that includes taking out at the center.
and that includes the reduction of the
Right.
dimensions on Hillside, removing the churches and removing the Blexel and Great Plain Avenue of C2 Central Business. Is that what you said? And that brings it down to 3410.
This is kind of,
Okay.
I'm just worried about putting a lot on the shoulders of the country. I mean,
I agree, I mean, I'm gonna be the one to. But I
I
think
just
we have to do the right thing, so what is the right thing, right?
so it sounds to me like not only people on this committee, but also people in town have conflicting opinions about the center. And so I wonder if that does bear more investigation,
I agree.
then perhaps removing it is the right thing to do at this time.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what I also, Michael.
Yeah, I would just say, I'm inclined to take out the center business again with the hope of a holistic look over it. And there are some things that can be done that can be done outside the MBTA process, including putting it over, because post offices do close occasionally, or they move. So having an overlay that goes over that, and goes over the church. And so when you take that out, you do kind of lose the congregation church because of the contiguity is broken, so I would take that out. I'm less inclined to take out the churches that just happen to be in the,
I can't stand
In the
behind
flow.
treating them differently though.
well,
I think we'll
I-
be accused of favoritism and
it's because it's
I
of
know,
where it is. I mean, we're not doing anything with the Presbyterian Church over at Central and Great Plain either, because that's not in the area.
Yeah, but that's
But
dependent.
Again, to me, the overlay is a benefit to I mean, nobody wants their church to go under, but if it does allow the congregation to, get more from it, if it ever came to that, so.
I understand what you're saying completely, but I also think at first, I mean, I'm not for the one at the corner of Great Plain Avenue and Dedham Ave. And because I feel like it's fronting the street in Town Hall, right? And then I also am for not doing the St. Joe's piece, so that it starts getting really complicated. So that's why, even though I appreciate what you're saying, and I was thinking about it as you were talking, I think that it's a little dicey and it would feel inequitable.
but yeah, I just would feel comfortable choosing one way.
Yeah.
And the planning board can still
Sure.
make these changes, but
Now that we know how to do special permit and as of right, no, just kidding. We got the tutorial.
Not to put Ron Ruth on the spot, but what do you think?
Well, I guess I think this is a motion that's gonna be all of these together,
Yeah,
not are we voting on churches, are we voting on, and assuming that it's a holistic motion, I plan to vote in favor.
in
If that's
favor.
responsive to
All
your
right,
question.
but then, because you're saying you like the basic better, but would you could we entice you to vote for this map at town meeting?
I mean, I think it's way beyond scope of this, but my own general view is that it's wiser, this is me personally speaking, not as a
Okay,
whole
good.
person, but just personally speaking, that it's wiser to keep a little powder dry with this. I think it's a very fluid situation.
Okay.
And how this is all gonna look in 2 or 3 years, we don't know. How we're gonna look at our own zoning with regard to general residence at Hersey, how that's gonna play out. There's so many moving parts that my own bias, if I was voting today, would be just
Okay.
satisfy it and keep processes working and thinking about it.
well, I hear you and I
Yeah.
appreciate your opinion, but I think that Needham needs more housing. And that waiting and see hasn't gotten us any housing in the past 20 years. And the neighborhoods that we've designed here with this group are thoughtful, make sense. And regardless of what would happen elsewhere in the state or elsewhere in legislation, that these are neighborhoods that I would like to see blossom. And so while I understand the wait and see, I think we've waited and we've seen. I don't.
I understand that point.
And I feel like if we would have been, I agree with you, and to add to that, if we would have been with these 3 things that we're talking about at 3,400, I would have been fine with it, right? Because I think that the unit count and the capacity of the town and all of that is important as well. But I do agree with Heidi we need to create more opportunities for housing, and all of the opportunities that we created, I probably would have suggested if we were at the planning board for consideration for the community or for consideration for the planning board, so.
So I'm gonna make a motion, which we can continue to discuss if we have more thoughts, that we eliminate the three
The churches,
the churches and St. Joe's School, just to be clear. The Pink Business Center and, yeah, we.
I'm sorry, because no, and Hamilton Heights and Avery.
Hamilton Heights and Avery, because I think, to me, that is a change that isn't a change.
From the
I
bonus,
mean,
you know,
it's not gonna change what's on the ground, and it does lower our number, which I do think is a benefit to getting it past town meeting, even though I
And we preserve buildability.
reasonably arbitrary, and it does preserve our buildability. And so that's my motion.
And it'll go from
Second.
4,300 to approximately 3,400.
Okay.
All right, and we have a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can someone just explain it one more time, why Hamilton Highlands is different from, why we're thinking of removing that, how that's different from, say, Rosemary,
From Rose?
which is also an A1, but we're not talking
you
about.
know, the Petrini like apartments.
Well, that's,
Oh,
it's a bit
because
more
it's not
central.
currently, is that right?
No, Hamilton Highlands is currently A1.
Yeah, so
Avery is.
that's the part
the school.
I'm not getting why we're saying that's not going to matter, but it might in the other place.
Rationale, from my perspective, is it's the furthest away from the MBTA. And then talking about equity and the parcel by St. Sebastian's that we were adding to the base, that being the furthest away.
Now, I also think that we upped the unit count in our A1 district.
You wanted 4 stories, right?
Right, and that is because it's furthest away, it's a step down to more residential neighborhoods, so I think it's a, you know, if you're gonna leave something out, that makes sense to me. But it is not, you know, essential, but it does help the case as a whole, I think.
Would it be better to break this into 3 separate motions?
I think I already seconded.
Yeah, what?
I already seconded.
We already said, well,
That's true.
about a half hour ago, a motion was made and
That's
seconded,
right. we did.
just to. All right,
Just have a question, is Avery the building that's across the street from Trader Joe's? That's on the. Okay, what is Avery?
Avery's up
It's the former school.
it's across from Hamilton Highlands, across the street with a playground behind it.
It's
Yeah,
near the
It's all-
fire station, the second fire station, Webster, the field there.
Is the building that's like behind the people. But it also fronts on it.
It's almost to the fire station on the opposite side of the street.
You went there for all.
No, friend of mine.
All right, where are we? Do we need more discussion on this motion? Okay, I'd like to do this as a voice vote. So if there's no discussion, Kevin,
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Reluctant, yes.
Jean?
I wish it was separated because I would leave Hamilton Island and Avery in, but since it's part of the 3 and I'm in favor of the other 2, I go yes.
I think that means that we've come to a resolution on our neighborhood housing map. You see, I just gave that a new name.
I think that was suggested in one of the.
It was, you know, it might have been suggested previously as well, but I'm gonna do some marketing here. So we have our base compliance map and it's all set, and now we have our neighborhood housing bonus map. Are there any other changes that we need to make? So that
That
one,
we need to hear from the community now.
Yeah, well, how many units did this vote bring us to?
3,400.
Okay.
I just want to say
Plus or
that.
minus approximate.
Okay, right.
I just want to say that, in the parameter table that Eric did when he ran the model, he left, the setbacks all to be determined.
Yes.
And so we're gonna just apply the underlying setbacks in those districts. Just so people understand that that's what we'll do. We'll take what,
Yeah, but we should review it individually, because again, I'm concerned about the lack, once you have as of right, the lack of any changes happening when, you know, similar to the Dover Amendment. I'm gonna say it
We
again
talked a
because.
bit about this last
That's right.
week,
Yeah,
I thought.
Chestnut,
because-
we want,
Because we were talking about the green space on Chestnut and how close it should be to the street, because currently people are parking in front of the building and we wanted them really to move the buildings forward and park in the back, so that we had more walkability on the streetscape.
Right.
Did we not?
We didn't decide on it.
we didn't decide, but we did talk about it. Yeah.
But we should, I mean, I think that's where we can still review it.
you can still review it, but, I mean, do you want me to just, fill it out with what the existing standards are? So you can take a
Well,
look?
well,
I don't think
the
it's
existing
gonna affect your
standards are,
density, your build out, Eric, do you?
What's that?
It's not gonna affect your build out or anything else that's happening.
The setbacks?
The setbacks.
The setbacks have no impact in the
Okay, so
MBTA
you can do
model.
everything you need to do.
Absolutely.
Right, so then we can look at what the setbacks are in the current district, and you can decide if you wanna make adjustments to those
So once-
foundational pieces.
So that means that once we have your map on the 7th, we could make that a topic of discussion on the 7th, correct?
I potentially wouldn't recommend that unless you want to be here very late again.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, right.
On the 7th, I mean, we're looking at the likely build outs, we're looking at the fiscal impact analysis.
We have to talk about the 28th.
Do we have a meeting scheduled after the 28th? I mean, I'm sure we do, but like, can we slot it into a meeting after the 28th?
But we do, we have one. the
Yeah, we have with.
It's like
on
April
the 4th.
7th.
I just wanna
4th,
make sure that
On the 4th, so we
Discuss
can do
it.
it then.
Yeah.
I'm not happy to leave it just like whatever stands, because I think that that's an issue.
Sure, we
do
should
wanna
review
solve
it,
that.
so that then it'll make it easier when, you know, the
Yeah.
site plan review will make it a lot easier.
Yeah, so,
Can I suggest that on the 28th, we highlight setbacks as one area that we've not yet discussed and welcome public feedback on that as well.
Yeah.
sure. But we have to discuss that in March 7th meeting to see how that would work out.
We discuss the setbacks, because that would work.
No, discuss how we would address that with the public.
Sure. I can just imagine if people, higher buildings, people typically want more setbacks for taller buildings.
On the base scenario, we do show setbacks. Presumably they are the current setbacks.
Yeah, that's.
Yes,
But
they
that's
are.
what I'm talking
Yeah,
about,
they're
like,
from the
right now.
underlying zoning.
Yeah, can't we just put those in on the chart for bonus scenario zoning
Yes.
parameters? And
We
that's what we're
can,
going to present?
That's what I was going to do, but I was gonna use the overlay provisions in Chestnut Street.
Oh, uh-huh.
But then for the other districts, I
yes.
was gonna use their
So,
underlying zoning.
so
I see.
you're gonna
Yeah.
you're gonna put that
That's a
together,
good
and then
idea.
Then you can respond to
we
it.
can respond to it. I
Okay.
think that sounds.
That's a good idea, yeah. Probably won't be take that much time if it's all carefully presented and we see it ahead of
Okay.
time.
Okay, briefly, Eric, can you just remind us, please, what we can expect to see in our next meeting?
Sure. We will start off with a presentation of what we believe to be the final of what we decided tonight, base and the bonus, just so that we're all on the same page with what that comes out to be. From there, we will present the propensity, well, we'll try to do this table that we talked about. Existing number of units, what the existing zoning would allow, what the base, what the bonus would allow, compare those, try to get that done. We'll do our best to get that done, just we have a lot to do in an extremely short period of time. We will present the propensity for change models, which I described for the base and the bonus. So we still have to do that work between now and the 7th. Then I have to run the fiscal impact analysis on the base propensity for change and the full base 1,800 units. then the bonus fiscal impact propensity for change, and the bonus 3,400 give or take units. So that's all on the table for that. We can show the 12.5% inclusionary zoning, although we've already shown more than that. So I don't know if you want to see that again, because we've sort of proved that 15 works. So I have 12.5 obviously is going to work. So that could be something that if we don't discuss that, it leaves more time for other things, but that's your call, not mine. But that's potentially on the table, and then the plan for the 28th. So what we want to do, which we've already started internal discussions with staff about that meeting and what we would be asking. So that's all on the table for the 7th. I just wanted to say, and I had mentioned this to Katie and Lee when we talked a week and a half ago, just given that we've got like 5 working days essentially to put all this together. I hope you're okay with this, but you will not see anything before. There will be no packet. We just don't have time to try and get that all together. So.
You'll be presenting the results of your fiscal analysis. Okay. The comments, we've gotten several comments from people who say the town should be hiring a consultant to do fiscal analysis. The answer is, we have hired a consultant.
Yeah,
to
I
do
guess they don't
fiscal
trust me. I don't know, but you know,
Well,
that's
okay.
fine. But yes, that
Maybe they-
is what I'm supposed
No,
to be
they may
doing.
not realize that that's
know,
part of your
I know.
work.
I think my understanding is it's about capital, because you're not doing capital.
No, but we are having these discussions with schools, and
Yeah,
I
no, I
think
know.
Katie and Lee are having the discussion with DPW and police and fire. So
Yeah.
so we'll integrate that all into our work, but we're focused mostly on the operations side.
We still have those outstanding minutes. I don't think we, I guess that didn't get reached. People may not be ready to look at that. I know there was a red line that went around before the last meeting, but
Oh, yeah, and I wasn't in the
since-
packet.
since it was
So-
late, yeah, I know, it's probably hard to do now, but I had made a number of suggested edits, and it was to round that out, because that was a very summary before, and so I thought it was useful to add a little more substance to
Okay, well,
that portion.
maybe since we will not have a packet,
The minutes can go out.
the minutes can be in our packet. And we can make sure to get the minutes
We'll have the
done,
packet.
and we'll not be distracted by any maps or anything like
Yeah.
that. We can just focus on the minutes and get those
It's
done right
important to
off
get the
bat.
minutes out. In fact,
Okay.
one comment was, we are producing minutes, so
Yeah,
how can
no,
people know what we're doing?
Absolutely, absolutely, but,
Okay.
that would take care of that.
But that was the one where that initial
Distinction.
preliminary assessment, or
Yeah.
whatever we want to call it, came up the first time,
Okay,
so.
all right, so within a week, we'll have our minutes up to date. Week of business. All right, anything else from anyone else? Okay, another long night, but, good work, and thank you for everyone being thoughtful and, you know, respectful of many opinions.
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? I saw you.
No.
Everyone's